I only went into that pharmacy for cold medicine, wanting nothing more than sleep. Then a stranger behind me whispered that I looked exactly like her missing sister. I tried to laugh it off, but her eyes were dead serious. When she leaned in and whispered a name I had never used, my blood ran cold. The terrifying part was not that she was crazy, but that the name actually sounded familiar. My name is Skyla Flores, and on that particular Tuesday, the only mystery I was interested in solving was why my sinuses felt like they had been filled with concrete. It was 4 in the afternoon in Over the Rhine, a neighborhood in Cincinnati that could not decide if it wanted to be gritty or gentrified, so it settled for being both at the same time. I was standing in line at a pharmacy that smelled of rubbing alcohol and cheap candy, clutching a box of the strongest daytime cold medicine legal tender could buy. My head was pounding a rhythm that synced perfectly with the flickering fluorescent light above the magazine rack. I was 32 years old, living alone, and currently employed, if you could call it that, as a freelance editor for Crescent and Quill Media. It sounded prestigious, but mostly it involved arguing with indie romance authors about the proper usage of semicolons and trying to explain why their hero could not physically do that to the heroine in a moving vehicle. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was the third time in 10 minutes. I pulled it out, squinting against the harsh screen light. It was a text from an author named Gary, whose manuscript was due on Friday. Skyla. Just had a thought. What if the detective is actually a ghost? Does that ruin the integrity of Chapter 3? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I wanted to type, Gary. The only thing ruined is my will to live. Instead, I shoved the phone back into my pocket. I was not dealing with ghost detectives today. I just wanted to pay for my chemicals, go back to my third-floor apartment, and pass out until Thursday. The line was moving with the speed of tectonic plates. The cashier, a teenager who looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the Milky Way, was having a slow-motion debate with a customer about a coupon that had expired 2 months ago. I sighed, shifting my weight from one foot to the other. The floor tiles were scuffed and gray, worn down by thousands of people just like me. Tired, sick, and waiting. That was when I felt it. The weight of a gaze. It is a primal instinct. I think the hair on the back of your neck does not stand up for no reason. Someone was watching me, not just glancing, but watching. I turned my head slightly, feigning a look at the impulse buy rack of gum and batteries. Standing directly behind me was a woman. She was older, perhaps in her early 60s, with hair the color of iron filings, that mix of gray and black that looks hard and brittle. She wore a wool coat that had seen better decades, and her hands were clutching a purse so tightly her knuckles were white. But it was her eyes that stopped me. They were dark, deep-set, and fixed on my face with a hunger that made my stomach turn over. She was not looking at me. She was looking into me. I offered her the reflex smile, the Cincinnati smile, the tight-lipped, polite grimace that says, I acknowledge your existence, but please do not speak to me. She did not smile back. Her lips parted, dry and trembling. You look just like my sister, she whispered. Her voice was thin, like paper tearing. I blinked, the social script loading in my foggy brain. This was a common thing. I have one of those faces. Dark eyes, dark hair, olive skin. I could be Italian, Greek, Latina, or just vaguely ethnic enough for people to project their relatives onto me. I had been told I looked like someone's cousin, niece, or high school best friend a dozen times. Oh, I said, my voice thick with congestion. I get that a lot. Must be a common face. I turned back around, facing the cashier. End of transaction. I thought, social contract fulfilled. But she did not stop. No, the woman said. She took a step closer. I could smell her now, a mix of mothballs and stale peppermint. Not a common face. Her face, you have her chin, that small dip in the center, and the way your hairline peaks. My hand instinctively went to my forehead. I dropped it immediately. This was getting weird. The cashier was finally scanning the expired coupon items, beep by agonizing beep. I'm sorry, I said, keeping my back to her. I think you have mistaken me for someone else. She went missing, the woman said. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed them. I froze. I should have ignored her. I should have pretended I was deaf or got another phone call from Gary the ghostwriter. But human curiosity is a fatal flaw. I turned around fully this time. The woman's eyes were wet, not crying, exactly, but swimming in a reservoir of grief that looked decades deep. I am sorry to hear that, I said, and this time, the sympathy was real. That is terrible. Knoxville, she said. Tennessee, 1999. She was 7 years old. My brain did a quick, involuntary calculation. Knoxville. I had never been to Knoxville. In 1999, I was roughly 5 or 6 years old, living in Lexington with Dennis and Marlene. I was riding a tricycle with a squeaky wheel and eating macaroni and cheese out of a box. I grew up in Kentucky, I said gently, trying to build a wall with geography. I have never been to Tennessee. She shook her head, a sharp, jerky motion. It does not matter where you think you were. It matters where she went. 1 minute she was there, by the fence. The honeysuckle was blooming. And then, she snapped her fingers. The sound was surprisingly loud in the quiet pharmacy. Gone. Minutes. Just minutes. The cashier called out. Next. That is me, I said, relief washing over me. I stepped up to the counter, eager to put a register and a plexiglass barrier between me and this woman's tragedy. I paid for the medicine. I bought a bottle of water too, just to have something to do with my hands. The transaction took 45 seconds. When I turned to leave, I hoped she would be gone, or at least bothering the person behind her. She was waiting for me by the automatic doors. I tightened my grip on the plastic bag. Ma'am, I said, my voice firmer now. I really need to get home. I am not feeling well. I know it sounds crazy, she said, and her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that was infinitely worse than her shouting would have been. I know what I look like to you. Just another old woman losing her mind in a drugstore. I did not say that. But you are her, she said. She reached out, her hand hovering near my arm but not touching, as if she was afraid I might burn her. My God, you are her, Violet. Violet. The name hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I stopped breathing. The automatic doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, letting in a gust of cold October air. But I did not feel the chill. I felt a heat, a terrible, prickly heat rising up the back of my neck. Violet. I had never been called Violet. My name was Skyla. Skyla Marie Flores. I had a birth certificate in a fireproof box under my bed that said so. I had parents in Lexington who had named me after the sky because, as Marlene always said, my eyes were so big and open. But when this stranger said the name Violet, something inside my brain misfired. It was not a memory. It was deeper than that. It was a sensation. Suddenly, I was not standing in a pharmacy in Cincinnati. For a split second, less than a heartbeat, I smelled soap, not the clean, chemical smell of the store, but a harsh, lye-heavy lavender soap, cheap soap, the kind that leaves a film on your skin. And I heard a sound. Er-ree, er-ree. The rhythmic, grinding screech of a metal swing set, rusty chains straining against gravity. Push me higher. V, push me higher. The hallucination vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving me dizzy and nauseous. I stumbled back a step, my hip bumping into a display of sunglasses. What did you say? I asked. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. The woman was watching my reaction. She saw the flinch. She saw the color drain out of my face. Her expression shifted from desperation to a terrifying kind of hope. Violet, she repeated. Violet Carver. That is your name. No, I said. I was shaking now. It was just the fever. It had to be the fever. My name is Skyla. You have the wrong person. Do I? She challenged. She dug into her purse, her hands fumbling with a chaotic mess of receipts and tissues. She pulled out a small notepad and a pen. She scribbled something down. her hand shaking so hard the pen tore through the paper. She ripped the page out and thrust it at me. "My name is Hannah Carver," she said. "I am your sister. I was 12 when you were taken. I was the one supposed to be watching you. I am not—" "Take it," she hissed. It sounded like a plea and a command all at once. I took the paper. I did not want to, but my hand moved on its own. Hannah Carver looked at me, and for the first time, her face softened. She looked exhausted. She looked like a woman who had been carrying a boulder on her back for 25 years and had just found a place to set it down. "If you feel safe," she whispered. The intensity in her eyes burned. "If you are safe, and you want to know, please message me. Please." She did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked out the automatic doors, disappearing into the gray Cincinnati afternoon without looking back. I stood there for a long time. People brushed past me, grumbling about me blocking the exit. The automatic doors opened and closed, breathing the city air on me. I looked down at the piece of paper in my hand. It was a phone number, written in jagged, frantic blue ink. I shoved it into my pocket. Separate from my phone, separate from my keys, contaminated. The drive home was a blur. I do not remember the traffic lights. I do not remember the turns. I went on autopilot, the reliable machinery of my life taking over while my mind spun in circles. Violet, the smell of lavender soap, the swing. I parked my car on the street and climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment. I locked the door behind me and threw the deadbolt. Then I engaged the chain. I never used the chain. My apartment was quiet. It usually felt peaceful, a sanctuary of books and soft blankets and the hum of my refrigerator. Today, the silence felt heavy. It felt like the silence of a waiting room. I dropped the pharmacy bag on the kitchen table. I did not take the medicine. My head was still throbbing, but the urgency of the cold had been replaced by a much colder dread. I went to the bathroom and turned on the light. The face in the mirror was the same face I had looked at every morning for 32 years. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, a mouth that naturally turned down at the corners when I was thinking. I leaned over the sink, getting close to the glass. I pushed my bangs aside. There, cutting through the left eyebrow, was a thin white line, a scar. I touched it. The skin was smooth, slightly raised. "You fell off your bike, Skyla," Marlene's voice echoed in my head. It was a memory from when I was 8, asking about the mark. "You were 3 years old. You were such a wild thing. You went right over the handlebars into the gravel driveway. Daddy had to stitch it up with butterfly bandages because you were screaming too loud for the doctor." It was a solid story. It had details. The gravel, the butterfly bandages, the screaming. I had never questioned it. Why would I? Kids fall. Kids get hurt. But looking at it now, under the harsh bathroom light, the scar looked precise. It was a straight line. Gravel tears skin. It shreds it. This looked clean. Almost like a cut made by something sharp, or a blow from something with a defined edge. I closed my eyes, trying to summon the memory of the bike crash. I tried to picture the gravel driveway in Lexington. I could see the driveway. I could see the bike, a red one with white tassels, but I could not see the fall. I could not feel the pain. It was like looking at a photograph of an event, rather than remembering the event itself. And what about the swing? I gripped the edge of the sink. The smell of that soap was so vivid in my mind it made me gag. We never used lavender soap. Marlene was allergic to floral scents. We used unscented Dove bars, always. I walked back out to the kitchen. The piece of paper was sitting on the table where I had dumped my coat. The jagged blue numbers stared up at me. Hannah Carver, Knoxville, Violet. I sat down on one of my mismatched dining chairs. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the floor. I should call Dennis and Marlene. I should call them and laugh about the crazy lady at the pharmacy. Dennis would chuckle and say, "Takes all kinds to make a world. Sky." Marlene would worry and tell me to make sure my doors were locked. It would be so easy. Just a phone call to reset my reality. But I did not pick up the phone. Instead, I sat there as the room grew dark. Listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren, I was Skyla Flores. I had a job, a lease, a social security number, a history. I knew who I was. But as the streetlights flickered on outside my window, illuminating the scrap of paper on the table, a toxic, poisonous thought bloomed in the center of my chest, dark and heavy. What if she is right? The apartment was quiet, but it was a loud kind of quiet. The silence hummed with the electricity of the refrigerator and the frantic, buzzing energy of my own brain. I had not slept. The clock on the microwave read 3 a.m, glowing a sickly green in the darkness of the kitchen. I was sitting on the floor of my living room. Surrounded by the debris of my own history, I had dragged the old external hard drive out of the bottom drawer of my desk. It was a bulky silver brick that hummed aggressively when plugged in, containing the digital archive of the Holloway family. Dennis, my dad, had digitized everything about 10 years ago. He was proud of it, calling it the Family Legacy Project. He had spent weeks scanning Polaroids and film prints, organizing them into folders by year. I clicked on the folder labeled 1998. There I was, 4 years old. I was wearing a yellow sundress, standing in front of an inflatable pool in a backyard that looked lush and green. My hair was wild, frizzy from the humidity, and I was holding a slice of watermelon that was bigger than my head. I clicked back. 1997, 3 years old. I was sitting on a carpet that looked brown and shag, playing with a set of plastic blocks. I looked smaller, rounder. My eyes were wide, staring at the camera with a kind of serious intensity. I clicked back. 1996. The folder was empty. My heart did a strange, stuttering little flip in my chest. I stared at the empty white space of the window. I clicked back again. 1995. Empty. I sat back, pulling my knees up to my chest. I had known this. Of course I had known this. It was part of the family lore, recited at dinner parties or whenever I asked why I did not have a baby book like my friends. The fire, Marlene would say, her voice dropping to a tragic whisper. Oh, Skyla, it breaks my heart every time I think about it. The old apartment in Louisville, a short circuit in the wall behind the sofa. We lost everything, every single photo album, every baby outfit, your first lock of hair. We barely got out with the clothes on our backs. It was a good story. It was dramatic, plausible, and it shut down any further questions because it made Marlene cry. Who wants to make their mother cry over lost memories? But now, in the cold light of 3 a.m, with the phantom echo of a stranger calling me Violet still ringing in my ears, the story felt thin. It felt rehearsed. I closed the laptop and stood up. My legs were stiff. I walked over to the filing cabinet in the corner of the room where I kept my important documents. I needed something tangible. Digital files were too easy to manipulate, too easy to delete. I pulled out the manila folder labeled Vital Records. My birth certificate was right on top. I took it out, holding it under the desk lamp. Certificate of live birth. Name, Skyla Marie Holloway. Date of birth, April 12th, 1994. Place of birth, Lexington, Kentucky. Mother, Marlene Ann Holloway. Father, Dennis Arthur Holloway. It looked official. It had the seal of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It had the signatures. But as I ran my thumb over the paper, something bothered me. The paper felt thick, crisp. The blue border was vibrant. I looked at the bottom of the document. There, in small print, was the date of issue, August 2001. I did the math. In 2001, I would have been 7 years old. Why was my birth certificate issued when I was 7? The fire, I whispered to myself, testing the excuse. The original burned in the fire. It made sense. If they lost everything in a fire when I was 3, they would have had to request new copies of everything. That tracked. It was logical. And yet, why did the font look so sharp? Why did the signatures of the registrar look digital? I worked with documents all day. I knew what a document from the mid-90s looked like versus a computer-generated reissue. This looked like a modern print on old stock paper. I put the certificate down. My hands were trembling. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to hear Marlene say it. I picked up my phone. It was too early to call, but I did not care. I needed to hear the lie, or the truth, right now. I dialed. It rang 4 times before Marlene picked up, her voice thick with sleep and panic. "Skyla? Honey? What is wrong? Is it an emergency?" "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No. Mom, I am sorry. I could not sleep." "It is 3:30 in the morning," Dennis mumbled in the background. "I know," I said. "I am sorry. I just had a dream about the fire." There was a pause on the line, a beat too long. "The fire?" Marlene asked, her voice sharpening. "What about it?" "Where did we live before that?" I asked. "Before Lexington. You always said Louisville. But where in Louisville? What street?" "Skyla, why are you asking this now?" Marlene sounded more awake now. "You know it hurts to talk about that time." "I know, Mom, but I realized I do not know the address. I wanted to look it up on Google Maps, just to see where I was born." Another pause. Silence, thick and heavy, stretched between Cincinnati and Lexington. "It was an apartment complex," Marlene said finally. "Riverview something, or maybe Riverside. It has been 30 years. Skyla. They probably tore it down years ago. It was a bad neighborhood. That is why we moved to Lexington, to give you a better life." "Riverview," I repeated. "And the fire? It destroyed everything? Even the things in the safety deposit box? Even the things at Grandma's house?" "We did not have a safety deposit box then. Honey, we were poor. We were just starting out. And your grandma? Well, you know she did not keep much." She was talking too fast. Marlene usually meandered through stories, taking detours to talk about the weather or what she cooked for dinner, but now she was concise, defensive. "Okay," I said. "I just wanted to know. Go back to sleep." "Skyla," she said, and her tone shifted. It became sickeningly sweet. "Are you okay? You sound stressed. Is work pushing you too hard again?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just work. Good night, Mom." I hung up before she could say anything else. I stared at the phone, Riverview something, or maybe Riverside. My mother was a woman who remembered the exact price of a gallon of milk in 1982. She remembered the name of her third-grade teacher's cat. She did not forget addresses. I needed sanity. I needed Brooke. Brooke Ellis was an emergency room nurse who had seen everything from gunshot wounds to people with light bulbs stuck in places light bulbs should not go. Nothing rattled her. She was the most aggressively pragmatic person I knew. I met her at 7 in the morning at a diner near the hospital as she was getting off her night shift. She looked tired, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, but her eyes were clear. I laid it all out: the woman at the pharmacy, the name Violet, the missing photos, the birth certificate date, the phone call with Marlene. Brooke listened while destroying a plate of scrambled eggs. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked at me. "Okay," she said. "So, option A. You ran into a grieving, delusional woman who projected her trauma onto you, and your parents are just garden-variety secretive because they were poor and embarrassed about their past. And option B?" I asked. "Option B," Brooke said, leaning forward. "You were kidnapped." Hearing it out loud made the air leave my lungs. "I wasn't kidnapped," I said weakly. "Dennis and Marlene, they love me. They took care of me when I had chickenpox. They paid for my college. Kidnappers can be nice." "Skyla," Brooke said. "Stockholm Syndrome is a thing for a reason, but let's not jump to felonies just yet." She pulled her phone out of her scrub's pocket. "What was the name?" "Hannah Carver," I said. "She said she was from Knoxville." Brooke's thumbs flew across the screen. "Hannah Carver, Knoxville. Okay, here she is. Facebook profile. Looks like she is active in a group called Tennessee Missing Children Network." She turned the phone around. I looked at the profile picture. It was the woman from the pharmacy, She looked younger in the photo, smiling, but the eyes were the same, haunted. "Scroll down," I said. Brooke scrolled. "She organizes fundraisers, Walk for the Missing. She posts a lot of articles about cold cases." "Search for the sister," I said. "Search for Violet." Brooke typed again. She tapped a link. Knoxville Gazette Archive. Article dated July 14th, 1999. She handed the phone to me. The headline read, "Search continues for missing heiress. 7-year-old Violet Carver vanishes from family estate." Heiress. The words stuck out like a jagged nail. I read the text, my eyes skimming over the phrases "police baffled," "no signs of forced entry," "massive reward offered," and then I saw the photo. It was a grainy black and white scan from a newspaper, but the face was clear enough, a little girl with dark hair cut in a bob. She was smiling, missing a front tooth. I zoomed in. My breath caught in my throat. It was not just the eyes, it was the smile. The way the left corner of her mouth pulled up slightly higher than the right. I did that. I still did that in every driver's license photo I had ever taken. "Brooke," I whispered. "I see it," Brooke said quietly. She wasn't eating her eggs anymore. "The chin, the eyes, it is creepy. Sky. Read the rest," I said. "What else does it say?" Brooke took the phone back. "Okay. Violet Carver, daughter of the late industrialist Harrison Carver, sole beneficiary of the Carver Family Trust, current guardian and wealth manager, Gideon Rusk, urges public to come forward." "Gideon Rusk," I repeated. "Who is that?" "Sounds like the guy in charge of the money," Brooke said. She tapped on another tab. "Let's look him up." A moment later, a face appeared on the screen. Gideon Rusk. He was younger in the photo, perhaps in his late 30s then, now likely in his 60s. He had a sharp, wolfish face, slicked back hair, and a suit that cost more than my car. He was listed as a partner at Rusk & Partners, attorneys at law. "Wealth manager," Brooke mused. "So, this kid, this Violet, she was worth a lot of money?" "Apparently," I said. "Sole beneficiary." "And she disappears," Brooke said, "leaving the money. Where?" "In the trust," I said. "Managed by him." We stared at each other. The diner noise, the clatter of plates, the sizzle of bacon, faded into the background. "Skyla," Brooke said, her voice serious now. "No jokes. If this is real, if there is even a 1% chance this is real, you are walking into a minefield. This is not just about a missing kid. This is about money, a lot of money." She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her grip was tight. "Do you want the truth?" she asked. "Or do you want peace? Because you can go home right now, delete your search history, and go back to editing romance novels. You can believe the fire story. You can be Skyla Holloway forever." I looked at the phone screen. I looked at the little girl named Violet who smiled exactly like me. I thought about the birth certificate issued 2 years too late. I thought about Marlene's evasive, terrified voice on the phone. I realized I did not have a choice. I never had a choice. The moment Hannah Carver spoke to me in that aisle, Skyla Holloway ceased to exist as a solid concept. She was just a ghost wearing my clothes. "I want to know," I said. Brooke nodded. "Okay, then we investigate. But we do it smart. We do not trust anyone, not even your parents. Especially not them," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I took my phone out. I pulled the crumpled piece of paper from my pocket, the one Hannah had forced into my hand. I smoothed it out on the table. I opened my messaging app. I typed the number in. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to a woman who claims to be your sister? What do you say to the person who might have the key to the locked room in your mind? I kept it simple. I kept it safe. "I think we should talk." I hit send. The message bubble turned blue. Delivered. I sat back, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Outside the diner window, the city of Cincinnati was waking up. People going to work, buses running, life moving forward. But I was stuck. I was stuck in a moment in 1999, by a fence in Tennessee, smelling lavender soap and waiting for a swing to push me higher. My phone buzzed. 3 dots appeared. Then a reply. I am ready when you are. Maple and Mason Cafe was the kind of place that charged $6 for a cup of coffee and tried to distract you from the price with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs. It was tucked away on a side street in Over the Rhine, quiet enough to have a conversation, but busy enough that 2 women sitting in a corner booth would not attract unwanted attention. I arrived 5 minutes early, but Hannah Carver was already there. She had chosen the table furthest from the door, obscured by a large potted fern. She was nursing a cup of tea that had stopped steaming long ago. When she saw me approaching, she did not smile. She just straightened her back, bracing herself as if she were about to receive a physical blow. You came, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. They were clasped tightly around the ceramic mug, her knuckles pale. I said I would, I replied, sliding into the booth opposite her. The air between us was thick, charged with a tension that made the casual chatter of the other patrons fade into white noise. I ordered a black coffee from a waiter who looked like he was judging my lack of a complicated order, and then I turned my attention back to the woman who claimed to be my sister. Hannah did not waste time with pleasantries. She reached into a tote bag resting by her feet and pulled out a thick, weathered manila folder. The edges were soft and fraying, the kind of wear that comes from being opened and closed thousands of times over 2 decades. She laid it on the table between us. It felt like she had placed a loaded gun on the wood. I brought some things, she said. I did not want to overwhelm you yesterday, but I thought, maybe if you saw them. She opened the folder. The first thing I saw was the poster. It was the original, missing flyer. The bright red block letters faded now to a dull rust color. Violet Carver, age 7, last seen July 14th, 1999. The photo was clearer than the one I had seen on the internet. The little girl stared back at me with eyes that were undeniably my own. Hannah slid a stack of photos across the table. They were candid shots. The colors shifted toward magenta with age, a family picnic, a birthday party with a lopsided cake, a girl on a pony. That was your 5th birthday, Hannah said, pointing to a photo of the girl. Me? Wearing a tiara and looking fiercely at the camera. You threw a fit because Mom put blue candles on the cake. You said blue was a boy color. You wanted pink. Always pink. I stared at the photo. I did not remember the cake. I did not remember the pony. But I felt a strange, phantom itch in the back of my brain, a sense of déjà vu that I could not quite place. Then Hannah pulled out a small, velvet jewelry pouch. I found this in the garden a week after you disappeared, she said softly. You were wearing it that morning. It must have fallen off. She tipped the pouch, and a gold locket slid out onto the table. My breath hitched in my throat. It was an oval locket, old gold, with a delicate engraving of a vine on the front. But it was not the design that made the room spin. It was the damage. On the back of the locket, near the clasp, there was a deep, jagged scratch. It looked like a lightning bolt. I knew that scratch. I had seen that exact same scratch on a silver locket Marlene kept in her jewelry box, the forbidden box on the top shelf of her vanity that I was never allowed to touch. When I was 10, I had sneaked into her room and opened it. I had found a silver locket with that exact same jagged mark. Marlene had caught me, snatched it away, and told me it was an antique from a flea market, damaged goods she bought for cheap. But the scratch was identical, the shape, the angle, the depth. It was as if someone had taken a sharp tool and marked 2 separate objects with the same signature. Why? I started, my voice failing. Why does it have that mark? You did it, Hannah said. With a pair of Dad's compasses from his drafting table. You said you were marking your territory. You did it to all your favorite things so nobody else would take them. My hands were under the table, gripping my thighs so hard it hurt. I marked my territory. I still wrote my name inside the cover of every book I bought, even the cheap paperbacks. I still put labels on my food in the office fridge. Even though I lived alone now. "Tell me about the day," I said. I needed to hear it. I needed to find a hole in her story. Hannah took a breath, looking past me at the brick wall. "It was a Tuesday," she began. "Hot, the kind of Tennessee heat that sticks to your skin. Mom was inside making iced tea. Dad was at the office. I was reading on the porch. You were in the backyard, near the old oak tree. You were singing." "Singing what?" "That silly song Mom made up. Sleep tight, little star. Do not let the shadows bite." A cold shiver violently ran down my spine. Do not let the shadows bite. I said that. I said it to myself when I was anxious. I said it to my college roommate when she was stressed about finals. I thought it was just a quirky turn of phrase, something I had picked up from a movie or a book. I never questioned where it came from. It was just there, embedded in my firmware. The phone rang. Hannah continued. It was a landline, obviously. Mom yelled for me to get it because her hands were wet. I went inside. It was a wrong number. Some telemarketer selling insurance. I hung up. I grabbed a glass of water. I went back out. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. It had been 3 minutes, maybe 4. The swing was still moving. It was rocking back and forth. Empty. The garden gate was closed. The latch was high, too high for you to reach. There was no scream, no sound of a car. Just silence. You were just gone, like you had evaporated. I swallowed hard. No car? Nothing. The police said that was the strangest part. Usually, there is a witness, a tire track, a struggle. But it was like someone just walked in, picked you up, and walked out, or like someone you knew was waiting there. She reached for the water glass, her hand shaking. "Do you peel your apples in one piece?" The question was so random it startled me. "What?" "Apples," she said. "When you eat an apple, do you peel the skin off in one long, continuous red ribbon? Mom taught you that. She said it was good luck if you could do the whole apple without the skin breaking." I looked down at my hands. I did. I always did. It was a compulsion. If the peel broke, I would get irrationally annoyed and start over with a new apple. Marlene used a slicer. Dennis bit into them whole. I was the only one who used a paring knife to create a red ribbon. "I do," I whispered. Hannah closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a shaky exhale. "I knew it. I knew it was you." She reached into her bag again. This time, she pulled out a small, rectangular box. It was a consumer DNA test kit. The plastic wrapper had been removed, but the contents were sealed. "I have already submitted my sample," she said, sliding the box toward me. "It is in the system. All you have to do is swab your cheek and mail this in. It is prepaid. It is private. You do not have to tell anyone. Not me. Not the people who raised you." I looked at the box. It sat on the table between the coffee and the cold tea, a small cardboard box containing the potential to detonate my entire life. "I have parents," I said. "The defense automatic. Dennis and Marlene. They are not criminals. Hannah. They are good people. They struggle to pay their mortgage. They drive a 10-year-old Honda. If I was this heiress, why would they raise me in a 2-bedroom ranch in Lexington?" "I do not know," Hannah said. "Maybe they did not know who you were. Maybe they were lied to. Or maybe—" She trailed off, then shook her head. "I am not accusing them of taking you, but Skyla, someone took you, and someone gave you to them. You deserve to know the truth." My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Brooke. "If you do it at my place. Do not take it to your apartment. Do not let it out of your sight. I want to make sure everything is sterile, and there is a witness. I do not trust the universe right now. Brooke, my anchor." I looked at Hannah. She looked desperate, hopeful, and terrified all at once. She was not asking for money. She was not asking for a kidney. She was asking for a spit sample. If I do this, I said, picking up the box. It felt light, lighter than it should for something so heavy. If I do this, and it comes back negative, you have to leave me alone. You have to never contact me again. I promise, Hannah said immediately. But if it is positive, we will cross that bridge when we get to it. I cut her off. I stood up. I needed to get out of there. The smell of coffee was making me nauseous, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Thank you for the coffee, I said, though I had not taken a sip. Be safe, Violet, she whispered. I did not correct her. I just walked out, clutching the DNA kit against my chest like a shield. The drive back to my apartment felt surreal. The city looked the same. The billboards, the potholes, the gray Ohio sky. But it felt like a set piece, a painted backdrop that could fall over at any moment. I did not go to Brooks immediately. I needed to stop at home first to get my overnight bag. I had a feeling I would not want to be alone tonight. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. The silence greeted me again, but this time it felt hostile. I walked into my bedroom and threw the DNA kit on the bed. Then I knelt by my filing cabinet. I had looked through the photos. I had looked at the birth certificate. But I had not looked at the junk folder, the box of miscellaneous papers Dennis had given me when I moved out. Old report cards, immunization records, random receipts he thought I might need for tax purposes. I dumped the box onto the floor. I sifted through the papers, a receipt for braces paid in cash, a report card from second grade where I got a C in conduct for talking too much, a vaccination record from a clinic in West Virginia? That was odd. I had never lived in West Virginia. And then I saw it. It was stuck between 2 pages of a high school essay. An envelope. It was cream-colored. Expensive stationery. The kind with high rag content that feels like fabric. It had been opened. The flap jagged. There was no letter inside. Just the empty envelope. But the return address was embossed in raised black ink. Rusk and Partners. Attorneys at Law. Suite 400. Nashville. Tennessee. I stared at the name. Rusk. Brooke had found that name yesterday. Gideon Rusk. The wealth manager, the man who urged the public to come forward, the man managing the Carver Family Trust. Why was there an envelope from a high-powered Tennessee law firm in a box of papers belonging to a middle-class couple from Lexington? Kentucky? My hands started to shake uncontrollably. Dennis and Marlene did not have lawyers like this. They used a guy named Bob in a strip mall for their taxes. They did not have business in Nashville. They definitely did not have business with the man managing the estate of the girl I was suspected to be. This was not a coincidence. A resemblance is a coincidence. A shared scar is a coincidence. Even a birth certificate date is a clerical error. But this was a connection, a physical, paper trail linking the people who raised me to the people who lost me. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. Violent and sudden, I scrambled back from the papers, my back hitting the bed frame. They knew, I whispered to the empty room. They knew something. I looked up at the bed, at the DNA kit sitting on the duvet. It was no longer a question of if I was Violet Carver. The question had shifted. The question was now, how much was I worth, and who had been paid for me? I grabbed the kit. I grabbed the envelope. I shoved them both into my bag. I was not doing this to find a sister. I was not doing this to find a fortune. I was doing this because my entire life, every memory, every I love you, every bedtime story, suddenly felt like a script written by a stranger. I needed to know who the author was. And then, I needed to know how to burn the book. I dialed Brooke. I am coming over, I said, my voice sounding like gravel. And Brooke, bring the heavy-duty gloves. We are opening Pandora's box. It was Monday morning, and the world was aggressively normal. Outside my window, a garbage truck was grinding its gears, compacting the weekend's waste with a mechanical groan. The rain was falling in a gray, unenthusiastic drizzle that smeared the city skyline into a watercolor blur. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Staring at my laptop screen, The subject line of the email was so boring it could have been spam. Status update. Your genomic analysis is complete. It sat there in my inbox, sandwiched between a promotional offer for a standing desk and a reminder from the library that my book on typography was due. It looked harmless. It looked like a receipt for an online purchase. I had been refreshing the page every 10 minutes for the last 3 days. Now that it was here, my hand refused to move. The mouse cursor hovered over the bold text. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, a tiny, frantic thumping against the plastic trackpad. Just click it, I whispered to the empty room. Schrodinger's cat is already dead or alive. Looking does not kill it. I clicked. The screen flashed white as the page loaded. A colorful dashboard appeared, full of cheerful graphics about ancestry and heritage, maps of Europe, pie charts of ethnic breakdown. I scrolled past all of it. I did not care if I was 10% Irish or 15% Iberian. I needed the tab labeled DNA matches. I clicked it. The list populated instantly. Usually, these things start with distant cousins, third or fourth removed, people you share a great-great-grandparent with, but there was only one name at the top of my list. Hannah Carver. Relationship, full sibling. Shared DNA, 50%. Probability, greater than 99.9%. The numbers were not numbers anymore. They were a verdict. I did not gasp. I did not scream. My reaction was entirely physical and completely silent. The strength simply evaporated from my muscles. It was as if someone had reached into my back and pulled out the main power cable. I slid off the chair. It was not a dramatic collapse. It was a slow, controlled descent until I was sitting on the linoleum floor of my kitchen. I pulled my knees up to my chest. I stared at the dust bunnies under the refrigerator. One thought looped in my brain, over and over, with the rhythm of the garbage truck outside. It is real. It is real. It is real. I was not Skyla Flores. I was not Skyla Holloway. I was a fiction, a construct, a character written by 2 people in Lexington, Kentucky, who had looked me in the eye for 25 years and lied with every breath. The sound of the front door unlocking made me flinch. Brooke walked in, shaking a wet umbrella. She was wearing her scrubs, her eyes circled with the dark exhaustion of a 12-hour shift. She was holding a bag of bagels. "I come bearing carbohydrates," she announced, kicking the door shut behind her. "I figured you would be up. Stressing about the... Skyla?" She saw me on the floor. The bagel bag dropped from her hand. It hit the floor with a soft thud. She was beside me in 2 strides, crouching down, her hands gripping my shoulders. Her hands were warm, grounding. "Did it come?" she asked. Her voice was low, urgent. I could not speak. I just pointed a shaking finger at the laptop on the table above us. Brooke stood up. She leaned over the table. I watched her eyes scan the screen. I saw the moment she read the percentage. Her posture stiffened. She stayed there for a long time, reading the same 3 lines over and over, making sure she was not hallucinating. Then she turned back to me. She sat down on the floor, right next to me, ignoring the dirt, ignoring her exhaustion. She took my face in her hands and forced me to look at her. "Listen to me," Brooke said. Her voice was fierce, the voice she used when a patient was crashing and she needed them to stay with her. "You are not crazy. You are not making this up. You were just hidden. You were just hidden." That was the key. That was the sentence that unlocked the pressure valve in my chest. I broke. It was not a cinematic cry. It was ugly. It was a guttural, heaving sob that felt like it was tearing my throat apart. I buried my face in Brooke's shoulder and cried for the little girl who vanished from a garden. I cried for the woman who had spent her life feeling like she was reading a script she did not write. I cried for the parents I loved, who had suddenly transformed into my captors. Brooke held me. She did not shush me. She just rocked me back and forth while the rain beat against the window. It took 10 minutes for the storm to pass. When it did, I felt hollowed out, scraped clean. I pulled away and wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweater. My eyes burned, my head pounded, but my mind was clear, sharper than it had ever been. I need to call her, I said. My voice sounded like I had swallowed gravel. Do it, Brooke said. She handed me my phone. I dialed the number I had saved simply as H. It rang once, twice. Hello? Hannah's voice was tight, anxious. She knew. She must have gotten the email notification too. It is me, I said. Silence. Then, a sound I will never forget. It was the sound of a person exhaling the breath they had been holding for 26 years, a long, shuddering release of air that sounded like a tire deflating. Violet, she whispered. She sounded weak, as if she might faint. Oh, God. Violet. It is 99.9%, I said. I needed to say the number. I needed to nail the fact into the wall of reality. I knew it, Hannah choked out. I knew it the second I saw you. I knew it. I believe you, I said. Hannah, I believe you. We stayed on the line for a moment, just breathing, two strangers connected by biology and a tragedy that was older than my career. But then, the journalist in my brain, the editor who fixes plot holes, woke up. Hannah, I said, we need to talk about why. Why would someone take me? Why would they give me to a couple in Kentucky? It does not make sense. Kidnappers ask for ransom. They do not just rehome children. Hannah's breathing hitched. The relief in her voice was replaced by something else, something colder. Hesitation. There is something you need to know, she said. It is not just about the family. It is about the money. I looked at Brooke. She was watching me closely, her eyebrows raised. What money? I asked. The Carver Family Trust, Hannah said. When Mom and Dad died, God, this is complicated. Dad set up a trust for both of us before he passed. But the way it was written, it was specific. The principal amount splits when the youngest beneficiary turns 25. But if a beneficiary is missing or deceased without a death certificate, their share goes into suspension. Suspension? It sits there, Hannah explained. Managed by the executor, collecting interest. Paying out administrative fees. Gideon Rusk has been managing it since 1999, since you disappeared. Gideon Rusk, I repeated. The name tasted like bile. The lawyer. He is the trustee, Hannah said. Skyla, listen to me. There was a legal battle about 5 years ago. The other cousins, Caleb and the rest, they wanted to declare you legally dead, so the trust would dissolve and the money would go to the secondary beneficiaries, them. And? Rusk fought it, Hannah said. He argued that without a body, the trust had to remain active in hope of your return. He kept the account open. He kept himself in charge of it. My stomach turned over. So as long as I am missing, but not dead, he keeps controlling the money? Yes, Hannah said. Millions of dollars. He charges a management fee, 2% annually. Do the math. He has made a fortune just by keeping your seat warm. I felt a cold clarify wash over me. I was not just a stolen child. I was an asset. I was a frozen bank account with a heartbeat. Hannah, I said, my voice steady now. I need you to send me everything, every legal document you have, every letter Rusk wrote, specifically, anything from around 2001. 2001? Hannah asked. Why then? Just send it, I said. Please. Okay, she said. I will scan them now. Give me 10 minutes. I hung up. What is it? Brooke asked. I think I know when the deal was made, I said. We moved to the table. I opened my laptop again. 10 minutes later, an email from Hannah arrived. It had 5 attachments. Trust_deed_1998.pdf, Rusk_motion_2001.pdf status, _affidavit_2005.pdf. I clicked on Rusk_motion_2001. I scrolled through the legalese, whereas, therefore, pursuant to, I was looking for dates. There it was. Motion to extend suspension of distribution. Date filed. August 14th, 2001. I froze. I reached into my bag and pulled out my birth certificate. The one Dennis and Marlene said replaced the one lost in the fire. Date of issue, August 20th, 2001. 6 days. There was exactly 6 days between Gideon Rusk filing a motion to keep the Carver money locked down and the state of Kentucky issuing a new identity for a 7-year-old girl named Skyla Holloway. "Look at this," I said, pointing at the screen. Rusk tells the court in Tennessee that he needs to keep the trust open because there is credible reason to believe the beneficiary is alive. 6 days later, I get a shiny new birth certificate in Kentucky. Brooke leaned in. "So he knew you were alive. He knew exactly where you were." "He did not just know," I said, connecting the dots that were burning in my mind like constellations. "He orchestrated it. He needed me to be gone so he could control the trust. But he needed me to be alive so the cousins could not inherit it. He needed me in storage." I looked at the birth certificate. Marlene Ann Holloway. Dennis Arthur Holloway. "They were on his payroll," I whispered. "My parents. My loving, normal, middle-class parents. They were the storage facility." "Skyla," Brooke said softly, "you do not know that for sure. Maybe they adopted you legally and Rusk just found out later and used it." "No," I cut her off. I pulled out the envelope I had found last night, the empty one from Rusk and Partners found in Dennis's junk box. They had correspondence. They knew him. You do not get a letter from a Nashville estate attorney unless you are involved in the estate. I stood up. The chair scraped loud against the floor. "I am going to Lexington," I said. Brooke stood up too. "I am coming with you." "No," I said. I walked over to the printer sitting on my bookshelf. I hit the power button. It whirred to life. "This is a family conversation. I need to look them in the eye, alone. Skyla, that is dangerous. If Rusk is involved—" "Rusk is in Nashville," I said. "Dennis and Marlene are 2 hours south. They are old. They are scared. And I'm going to break them." I connected my phone to the printer. I selected the DNA report. Print. The machine began to churn. Chug, chug, chug. The sound was rhythmic, almost hypnotic. The paper slid out. Warm and crisp. I picked it up. 1 sheet of paper. That was all it took to destroy 25 years of history. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my bag with the birth certificate and the Rusk envelope. "If I do not text you by 6 o'clock tonight," I told Brooke, "call the police. Tell them everything." "I hate this," Brooke said, crossing her arms. "I really hate this." "Me too," I said. I walked out of the apartment. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still a bruised, angry purple. I got into my car, a sensible sedan that I had bought with money Dennis had loaned me for the down payment. I looked at the steering wheel. I looked at the DNA results sitting on the passenger seat. I started the engine. I was not driving to visit my parents. I was driving to a crime scene, and I was the evidence. I pulled out onto the street and turned south. Toward the highway, toward Lexington, toward the people who had loved me, raised me, and stolen my name. The driveway was paved with the same cracked asphalt I had scraped my knees on 1,000 times. The hydrangeas were blooming in aggressive bursts of blue along the porch railing. The mailbox still leaned slightly to the left, a testament to the time Dennis backed the station wagon into it in 2004. It was terrifyingly, brutally normal. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, the engine ticking as it cooled. I stared at the front door. Behind that wood and glass lived the people who had taught me how to tie my shoes, how to drive a stick shift, and how to make the perfect grilled cheese sandwich. They were my parents, and they were my kidnappers. I grabbed the folder from the passenger seat. I checked my phone. No messages from Brooke, which meant she was waiting, worrying. I took a deep breath. Stepping out of the car, the air smelled of cut grass and charcoal grills, the scent of suburban innocence. I did not knock. I still had my key. I turned the lock and pushed the door open. The television was on, a low hum of a game show coming from the living room. "Marlene?" I called out. "Dennis? Skyla?" Marlene's voice floated from the kitchen. Oh my goodness. Dennis, turn that down. Skyla is here. She came around the corner, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her face lighting up with that genuine, crinkly-eyed smile that had always made me feel safe. She looked older than the last time I saw her. Her hair was thinner, her shoulders a little more stooped. "Honey, you did not tell us you were coming," she said, reaching out to hug me. I stepped back. Her arms fell to her sides, hovering in empty space. The smile faltered, then vanished. "Skyla?" she asked, her voice dropping. "What is wrong?" Dennis appeared in the hallway, clutching the remote control. He looked from me to Marlene, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure immediately. "Everything okay, kiddo?" he asked. "We need to sit down," I said. My voice was calm. It scared me how calm it was. It was the voice of a stranger. We sat at the round oak table in the kitchen. This was where we ate Christmas breakfast. This was where I did my homework. This was where I cried when my high school boyfriend dumped me. I did not say a word. I opened the folder. I took out the single sheet of paper with the colorful graph and the brutal percentage. I slid it across the wood grain until it rested directly in front of Dennis. "Read it," I said. Dennis put on his reading glasses. He picked up the paper. Marlene leaned in, squinting. I watched Dennis's face. I watched for shock. I watched for confusion. I waited for him to say, "What is this? Who is Hannah Carver? This must be a mistake." He stared at the paper for a long time. His jaw muscle jumped. Once, twice. Then he looked up at me over the rim of his glasses. His eyes were not confused. They were terrified. "Where did you get this?" he asked. The question hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. He did not ask if it was true. He asked where I got it. He was not surprised by the information. He was surprised by the discovery. "It does not matter where I got it," I said. "It matters that it exists." Marlene let out a small, strangled sound. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh, Dennis, I told you it would come back." "Quiet, Marlene," Dennis snapped. He had never snapped at her in front of me before. "Do not tell her to be quiet," I said, leaning forward. "You have been quiet for 25 years. That is enough." "Skyla, listen," Dennis started, putting the paper down. "You do not understand. It is not what you think. I think I was stolen," I said. "I think I was a 7-year-old girl named Violet Carver who disappeared from her backyard in Tennessee. And 6 days later, you bought me a new birth certificate." "We did not steal you," Marlene cried out. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled it away. "We saved you. We were told you were unwanted. We were told your mother was a drug addict who could not take care of you, that you were going to be put in the system, bounced around foster homes. We wanted a child so badly. Skyla, we tried for 10 years. And then the opportunity came." "The opportunity," I repeated. The word felt slimy. "So you just went shopping for a kid?" "No," Dennis said firmly. "We were told it was a private adoption, a closed adoption. That is what they called it." "Who is they?" I asked. Dennis looked away. He looked at the refrigerator. He looked at the window. He looked anywhere but at me. "Who gave me to you?" I demanded, slamming my hand on the table. The salt shaker jumped. "It was a lawyer," Dennis whispered. "Name him." "We cannot," Dennis said. "We signed papers. Skyla. If we say his name, we lose everything. The house, the pension. He made us sign things that would ruin us." "You are already ruined," I said coldly. "You kidnapped a child. You committed fraud. Do you think this house matters right now? Name him." Dennis wiped a hand over his face. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who had been carrying a heavy stone for a quarter of a century and finally just let it crush him. "Rusk," he said. "Gideon Rusk." I closed my eyes. Hearing it out loud was different than seeing it on paper. It made it physical. "He came to us," Marlene said, tears streaming down her face. "He knew Dennis's cousin. He said he had a client. a wealthy family who had an illegitimate child they wanted to disappear quietly. He said the mother was unstable. He said if we took you, we had to leave the state. We had to change your name. We had to promise never to look back. And you believed him? I asked. A lawyer shows up with a 7-year-old girl and tells you to run, and you just believed him? You were so small, Marlene sobbed. You looked so sad. You did not speak for weeks. We just wanted to love you, and we did love you. Skyla, you have to know that. Every meal, every birthday, every night we tucked you in, that was real. None of that was a lie. The love might have been real, I said, but the foundation was a crime. We paid him, Dennis muttered. My head snapped up. What? Fees, Dennis said. Legal fees, facilitation fees. It cost us our savings, $40,000. We thought it was for the adoption agency. Now I guess it was just the price. I felt sick. I stood up and walked over to the buffet cabinet where Dennis kept the important papers. Open it, I said. Skyla, please, Marlene begged. Open it, Dennis, or I call the police right now and they can open it with a crowbar. Dennis stood up slowly. He walked over, his movements stiff and arthritic. He took a key from his pocket and unlocked the drawer. He pulled out a thick envelope. I snatched it from him. I dumped the contents onto the table. There were bank statements, tax returns, and a document bound in blue legal paper. Confidentiality and relocation agreement. I flipped through it. It was brutal. The undersigned agreed to relocate immediately outside the radius of 300 miles. The undersigned agreed to legally change the name of the minor child immediately. The undersigned acknowledged that any breach of this agreement will result in immediate legal action and financial penalties. It was signed Dennis Holloway and Marlene Holloway. And there, next to them, was the signature I had expected. Gideon Rusk. For Rusk and Partners. But as I shuffled the papers back into the pile, my eye caught something else. Something that did not fit. It was a credit card statement, a Discover card statement, account holder, Skyla M. Holloway. Date, September 2008. I frowned. In 2008, I was 14 years old. You cannot have a credit card at 14. I pulled the statement out. The balance was high, $5,000. The charges were for Home Depot, a transmission repair shop, and a local grocery store. What is this? I asked, holding up the paper. Dennis went pale, paler than before. That, he stammered. That was a hard year. The factory cut my hours. We needed the roof fixed. We needed the car to run. So you opened a credit card in my name? I asked. I was 14. We paid the minimums, Dennis insisted. We intended to pay it off. It was just easy, since your social security number was new, since the credit history was clean. I dug deeper into the pile. I found another one, a personal loan, $10,000, taken out when I was 17. You did not just steal me, I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of rage. You used me. You used me as a reset button for your life. You bought a kid to play house. And when money got tight, you used that kid as a financial life raft. We fed you, Dennis shouted, finding a sudden, desperate anger. We clothed you. We put a roof over your head. Do you think that is free? Yes. We used the credit. We used it to keep this house so you would have a place to sleep. Stop it, Marlene screamed. Dennis, stop it. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear, yes, but I also saw the entitlement, the twisted logic that said because they saved me, they owned me, because they fed me, they had the right to consume me. I picked up the DNA result and the legal agreement. I folded them and put them in my pocket. I am leaving, I said. Skyla, wait, Marlene pleaded, grabbing the edge of my sweater. Where are you going? This is your home. I gently, but firmly, uncurled her fingers from my clothes. This is not a home, I said. It is a holding cell, and my name is not Skyla. Do not say that, Dennis said. We are your parents. You are my jailers, I said, and you are my debtors. I walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the knob. I did not look back at them. I am not going to the police today, I said. I am going to give you time to sit with this, but do not think for 1 second that this is over. You will not hear from me for a while. Do not call me. Do not come to Cincinnati. If you try to contact me, I will hand this entire folder to the FBI. Skyla, Marlene wept. Goodbye, Dennis. Goodbye, Marlene. I walked out. I closed the door on the sound of Marlene's sobbing and the low drone of the television that was still playing that cheerful game show. I got in my car and drove. I did not know where I was going, only that I had to move. I drove until the suburbs faded into the highway, until the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. I pulled into a motel parking lot about 40 miles north of Lexington. It was a cheap place, the kind with neon signs that buzzed and vending machines that sold stale chips. I checked in, paying cash. I needed anonymity. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress in the dim room. My head was throbbing. I felt hollowed out, like a pumpkin carved for Halloween. I took out my phone. I needed to call Brooke. I needed to tell her I was alive. But before I could unlock the screen, the phone rang. It was not Brooke. It was not Dennis. It was a number I did not recognize. Area code 615, Nashville. My thumb hovered over the red button. Ignore it. Just ignore it. But curiosity is a fatal flaw, and fear is a powerful motivator. I pressed green. I put the phone to my ear. I did not speak. There was a pause on the other end. A smooth, quiet pause. No background noise, no static, just the silence of an expensive office. Ms. Flores, a voice said. It was a man's voice, cultured, deep. It sounded like mahogany and old scotch. It sounded like money. Who is this? I asked, though I already knew. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. We have not had the pleasure of a formal introduction, the voice said. But I believe you have been reading my correspondence. I stopped breathing. My name is Gideon Rusk, he said, and I think you and I need to have a conversation before you do anything complicated. I have nothing to say to you, I whispered. Oh, I think you do, Rusk said. His tone was not threatening. It was patronizing, like an adult correcting a child. You have half a story, Violet, and half a story is a dangerous thing. I can explain everything. I can make this all go away. Or what? Or I can make sure the reality you have just discovered becomes very, very unpleasant for everyone involved, including those sweet people in Lexington. Do not touch them, I said instinctively. Then listen, Rusk said. Meet me tomorrow, neutral ground. I will send you the address. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Rusk said lightly. But you are curious, and you are smart. You want to know why, and I am the only one who has the answer. The line clicked. He hung up. I stared at the phone in the dark motel room. The neon sign outside flickered, casting a red rhythm across the walls. Buzz, dark, buzz, dark. I was not Skyla Flores. I was not Violet Carver. I was a loose end, and the man holding the scissors had just made contact. The drive to Knoxville took 4 hours, but it felt like traveling through a wormhole into an alternate dimension. As I crossed the state line from Kentucky into Tennessee, the landscape grew hillier, the trees denser. I was driving toward a past that I had no memory of, to meet a family that had been mourning a ghost for 26 years. I met Hannah at her house, not the grand estate where I was taken, but a modest, charming bungalow in a quiet neighborhood. It was painted a soft yellow, with a porch swing that looked disturbingly similar to the one in my nightmares. When I stepped out of the car, Hannah did not run. She stood on the porch, her hands clasped in front of her, waiting. It was only when I got close enough to see the tears brimming in her eyes that she moved. She pulled me into a hug that was fierce and desperate. She smelled of cinnamon and that same stale peppermint I remembered from the pharmacy. "You are here," she whispered into my hair. "You are actually here." "I am here," I said. Though I felt less present than ever, I felt like an imposter in my own body. She led me inside. The house was warm, cluttered in a cozy way, but what struck me immediately was the shrine. The hallway was lined with photographs, but they were not just of Hannah or her life. They were of me, or rather, of Violet. Violet as a baby. Violet taking her first steps. Violet in a bathtub full of bubbles. And then, abruptly, the photos stopped at age 7. The rest of the wall was filled with age progression sketches, artists' renditions of what I might look like at 12, at 16, at 20. It was horrifying to look at a drawing of a 16-year-old girl that looked vaguely like me, but with softer eyes and a different chin. It was like walking through a graveyard of potential lives I never got to live. "We never took them down," Hannah said, noticing my stare. "We couldn't." She led me into the living room. An old woman was sitting in a floral armchair, her hands resting on a cane. She looked frail, her skin like crumpled tissue paper, but her eyes were sharp. "Grandma," Hannah said softly. "Look who it is." Evelyn Carver looked up. Her eyes widened behind thick glasses. She let out a small, bird-like sound. "Violet?" she quavered. I walked over and knelt beside her chair. "Hello," I said. I did not know what to call her. Grandma felt too intimate. Mrs. Carver felt too cold. Evelyn reached out. Her hand was shaking violently. She touched my cheek, her fingers dry and cool. She traced the line of my jaw. Then her thumb brushed over the scar on my eyebrow. "The mark," she whispered. "The bicycle. You were so brave. You didn't cry until the doctor showed you the needle." I froze. Dennis and Marlene had told me I screamed before the doctor came. But this woman, this stranger, remembered the needle. "You look just like your mother," Evelyn said, her voice cracking. "Just like my Sarah." For the next 2 hours, I sat in that living room while they reconstructed my identity. They told stories about Violet, how she loved mud pies, how she was terrified of thunder, how she used to hide her vegetables in the potted plants. I listened, nodding politely, sipping tea I did not want. It was surreal. They were talking about a person who was dead. Yet she was sitting right there. I felt a profound sense of dissociation. I was watching a movie about myself. I had no memory of the mud pies or the thunder. I only had the sensory flashbacks, the soap, the swing, and those were terrifying, not comforting. Then the door opened, and the atmosphere shifted. A man walked in. He was tall, wearing a polo shirt that was tucked in a little too tightly. He had a face that was handsome but pinched, like he smelled something bad. "Caleb," Hannah said, her voice stiffening. "I told you we were having a private afternoon." "I am family," the man said. Breezing past her, he looked at me. His eyes did not have the warmth of Hannah's or the awe of Evelyn's. They were calculating. He looked me up and down, like he was appraising a piece of furniture at an estate sale. "So," he said, extending a hand, "the prodigal sister returns. I am Caleb, your cousin." I shook his hand. His grip was damp. "Skyla," I said. "Violet," he corrected with a tight smile. "We should get used to saying it, right? It makes the paperwork easier." He sat down on the sofa, uninvited. "It is a miracle, really," Caleb said, leaning back. "After all this time, the trust was just about to hit the 25-year review mark. Another month, and things would have been different." "Caleb, not now," Hannah warned. "I am just being practical," Caleb said, spreading his hands. "Violet, or Skyla, needs to know the situation. The Carver Trust is a complicated beast. Gideon has been keeping it on life support. But if you are back, that changes the distribution structure entirely. We are talking about reinstatement of beneficiary status. It is going to be a legal headache." I looked at him. I saw it then. The greed. It was not overt. It was hidden under layers of familial concern. But it was there. He was not looking at a long-lost cousin. He was looking at a reduction in his potential inheritance. "I am not here for the money," I said quietly. Caleb laughed. It was a short, barking sound. "Everyone says that, until they see the balance sheet. Do not pretend, cousin. You did not just show up by accident right before the deadline." "I did show up by accident," I said, my voice hardening. "I was buying cold medicine." "Sure," Caleb said. "And I am the King of England." He stood up. "Well, I just wanted to see with my own eyes. I will let you ladies catch up, but Violet, get a lawyer, a good one, because Gideon Rusk is going to eat you alive if you walk into his office with just a DNA test and a sob story." He walked out, leaving a trail of expensive cologne and anxiety in his wake. "I am sorry," Hannah said, sinking onto the sofa. "Caleb has always been focused on the bottom line. He has been waiting for the trust to dissolve, so the secondary beneficiaries, the cousins, get the payout." "Tell me about Rusk," I said. "Caleb seems to think he is dangerous. Dennis and Marlene are terrified of him. Who is he, really?" Hannah sighed. She looked at Evelyn, who had drifted off to sleep in her chair. "Gideon Rusk was Dad's lawyer," she said. "He set up everything after the disappearance. He was our rock. He handled the police, the media, the private investigators. He was the one who kept the search going when everyone else wanted to give up. Or he kept the search going to keep the fees coming," I suggested. Hannah looked uncomfortable. "I have had my doubts," she admitted. "Over the years, he always seemed to know things before the police did. And the money, he controls it all. Every time I want to withdraw funds for a charity event or house repairs, I have to go through him. He approves it, but he makes me feel like I am asking for an allowance." "He knew I was alive, Hannah," I said. "He found me in 2001. He brokered the deal with Dennis and Marlene." Hannah covered her face with her hands. "I want to believe you. I do. But it is so evil. Why would he do that to a child? To a family?" "Because a missing heir is more profitable than a found one," I said. "If I am dead, the money goes to people like Caleb, and Rusk loses control. If I am found, I get the money, and Rusk loses control. But if I am missing, the money stays in limbo, and he stays the gatekeeper." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. An email notification. From Gideon Rusk. Subject: a proposal for resolution. I opened it. "Dear Ms. Flores, I trust your trip to Knoxville has been illuminating. Family reunions can be emotionally taxing, and I wish to spare you further distress. I am prepared to offer you a settlement, a one-time payment of $5 million, tax-free, wired to an offshore account of your choice. In exchange, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding your identity and the events of the past 25 years. You will retain the name Skyla Flores. You will return to Cincinnati. You will renounce any claim to the Carver Trust. This offer expires in 48 hours. Sincerely, Gideon Rusk." I handed the phone to Hannah. She read it, her face paling. $5 million, she whispered. "He is trying to buy you off. He is trying to buy my silence," I said. "Which means he is scared. He knows I can prove it." I stood up. "I need to go. I cannot stay here tonight. It is not safe." "Where will you go?" Hannah asked. "I have a friend," I said. "Someone who is good at digging." I drove to a motel on the outskirts of the city, far away from the Carver bungalow and far away from any place Rusk might look. I called Brooke. "Hey," she answered on the first ring. "Please tell me you are not in a trunk." "I am in Knoxville," I said. "I met the family. I met the grandma. I met the greedy cousin. And Rusk just offered me $5 million to go away." $5 million? Brooke let out a low whistle. "Okay, so we have upgraded from kidnapping to high-stakes corporate blackmail. Did you take it?" "No," I said. "I want to bury him. Brooke, I do not want his money. I want to know why my life was stolen." Good answer, Brooke said. Because I have been busy too. I called in a favor with a friend of mine who works in credit risk. We ran a deep dive on your social security number, the one Dennis and Marlene got for you. And? It is weird. Skyla, it was issued in 2001, like we thought. But there is a flag on it. A protective freeze was placed on the file in 2005. Who placed it? That is the kicker. It wasn't your parents. It was placed by a court order, a guardian ad litem request. I traced the case number. It leads back to a sealed juvenile file in Nashville. A 2005, I muttered. I was 11. Right. And here's the other thing. The freeze was lifted in 2008, right before those credit cards were opened in your name. So someone locked my identity down for 3 years, then unlocked it so it could be used? Exactly, Brooke said. And I found something else. Do you remember that junk email address Dennis used? The one he forwarded you those tax documents from last year? Yeah, the Yahoo account he has had since the Stone Age. I may have guessed the password, Brooke said. It was Marlene123, literally the first thing I tried. Brooke, that is illegal. So is kidnapping, she countered. Anyway, I searched his inbox for Rusk. Most of it was deleted, but he missed one. It was in the trash folder. But Yahoo keeps trash for a long time if you do not empty it manually. It is a scan, a PDF called Carver Trust Addendum. Send it to me, I said. A minute later, the file appeared on my phone. I opened it. It was a dense legal document, scanned crookedly. It was dated January 2005. Addendum to the Management Agreement of the Carver Family Trust. Subclause 4B. In the event of the continued absence of the primary beneficiary, Violet Carver, the trustee, Gideon Rusk, is authorized to allocate discretionary funds for external maintenance costs related to the preservation of the estate's interests, and there, handwritten in the margins, was a note in blue ink. Dennis, this covers the increase we discussed. Keep her quiet. G.R. My hands shook. External maintenance costs. That was me. I was a maintenance cost, like a lawn service or a pool cleaner. He was paying them a stipend, I said, my voice trembling with rage. He wasn't just paying them off once, he was paying them monthly. That is why they could afford the house. That is why they could afford my braces. I was being paid for by my own inheritance, laundered through the man who stole me. It gets worse, Brooke said softly. Look at the next page. I scrolled down. The trustee reserves the right to terminate these payments if the asset becomes unstable or compromised. Asset. I closed my eyes. I was not a person to Gideon Rusk. I was an asset, a volatile stock that needed to be managed. He tracked everything. I realized. The credit freeze, the cards, the payments. He has been puppeteering my entire life from an office in Nashville. Skyla, Brooke said, you cannot meet him alone. He is not just a lawyer. He is a cleaner. He fixes things. And right now, you are a broken thing. I am not meeting him alone, I said. I am going to get help. Real help. Who? I am going to find a lawyer who hates Gideon Rusk as much as I do. And then I am going to find a journalist. Be careful, Brooke said. Please. I hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the traffic outside. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The confusion was gone. The hurt was still there. But it was hardening into something useful. It was hardening into a weapon. I looked at the email from Rusk again. $5 million. He thought that was a lot of money. He thought that was enough to buy a life. I opened my laptop. I started searching for law firms in Cincinnati and Nashville. I searched for lawsuits against Rusk and partners. I found a name, Marissa Dane. She was a civil litigation attorney in Cincinnati who had been quoted in an article about trust fund fraud. The article mentioned she had once gone up against Rusk in a probate case and lost, but she had been vocal about his unethical tactics. I wrote down her number. Then I searched for local journalists. I found a byline in the Knoxville Gazette. Owen Price. He had written a series of exposés on charity fraud. I wrote down his email. I was done being the victim. I was done being the missing girl. I was done being Skyla the editor or Violet the ghost. I was about to become Gideon Rusk's worst nightmare. I was the asset that woke up. I packed my bag. I was not staying in this motel. I needed to move. I needed to be impossible to track. I went to the front desk and checked out. As I walked to my car, I felt eyes on me. I turned. A black sedan was parked at the far end of the lot. The windows were tinted dark. It was just sitting there. Engine idling. I did not run. I walked calmly to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I pulled out of the lot, turning right. The black sedan pulled out and followed. I checked my rearview mirror. It stayed 3 car lengths behind. "Okay," I whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "You want to play tag? Let's play." I drove toward the highway, my heart hammering a war drum against my ribs. The game had changed. It was not about family anymore. It was not about biology. It was about survival, and I intended to win. I stopped driving in circles. I stopped watching the rearview mirror for black sedans. If Gideon Rusk wanted to play a game of cat and mouse, I was done being the mouse. I was going to be the trap. I found Marissa Dane's office in a strip mall in Cincinnati, wedged between a dry cleaner and a payday loan store. It was not the kind of glass and steel fortress Rusk inhabited. It smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee, and the carpet was a shade of brown that had gone out of style in 1985. But Marissa herself was razor sharp. She was a woman in her 40s with hair cut in a severe bob and eyes that looked like they had seen every possible way a human being could lie about money. I sat across from her, dumping my chaotic collection of evidence onto her desk. The DNA results, the birth certificates, the maintenance emails, the credit freeze records. Marissa read through them in silence. She did not gasp. She did not look shocked. She read with the cold, surgical precision of a butcher looking for the best place to cut. Finally, she looked up. "You want to go after Gideon Rusk," she said. It was a statement, not a question. "I want to take him apart," I said. Brick by brick. Marissa leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. "I have sued Rusk twice. I lost twice. He is not just a lawyer. He is an institution. He knows where the bodies are buried because he usually dug the holes. But this," she gestured to the pile of papers, "this is different. This is sloppy. He got arrogant." She pulled a yellow legal pad toward her. "If I take this case, we do it my way," she said. "Rule number 1. You are a ghost. You change your passwords, your bank PINs, your email. You get a burner phone. You do not use your credit cards. If you buy a stick of gum, you use cash." "Done," I said. "Rule number 2. We do not sue yet. We gather. We need so much evidence that when we finally file, he drowns in it before he can call a judge. And rule number 3. You never, ever meet him alone. If he breathes in your direction, I want it recorded." "He wants to meet," I said. "He offered me $5 million. Marissa smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "Good. That means he is scared. We are going to accept the meeting, but not on his terms. We are going to wire you for sound." The next 3 days were a blur of tactical maneuvering. I was not just a victim anymore. I was a project manager. I went back to my apartment only once, with Brooke acting as my bodyguard, to grab my laptop and my files. Then I set up a war room in Brooke's living room. I used my skills as an editor. I treated the Carver Trust documents not as legal scripture, but as a terrible manuscript full of plot holes. I read the addendums Dennis had saved. I read the public filings Marissa pulled. I looked for the passive voice. Writers use passive voice when they want to hide the subject of the sentence. Mistakes were made. Funds were allocated. I found a clause in the 2004 annual report. Discretionary disbursement authorized for third-party security regarding asset preservation. "Asset preservation," I muttered, highlighting the phrase. "That is me. He billed the estate for security to pay Dennis and Marlene." I kept digging. I found a recurring expense. consulting fees paid to the Knox County Missing Children's Initiative. Brooke, I called out, look up this charity. Brooke was on the floor. Surrounded by old medical records she had pulled from the hospital database archives, illegally, but we were past the point of caring about minor felonies. Knox County Missing Children's Initiative, Brooke typed. Okay, nonprofit, founded in 1999, mission, to support families of the vanished, board of directors. She paused. Well, surprise, surprise. Let me guess, I said. Gideon Rusk. Treasurer, Brooke said, and the chairman is a guy named Silas Vane. Who is that? Check Rusk's firm website, I said. Brooke clicked a few times. Silas Vane, senior paralegal at Rusk & Partners. It is a loop, I said, feeling the adrenaline spike. Rusk sets up a charity to look like he is helping find me. He funnels trust money into the charity as donations. The charity pays consulting fees back to Rusk's firm or to his employees, and he uses a slice of that cash to pay my kidnappers. It is brilliant, Brooke said, shaking her head. Evil, but brilliant. He was getting paid to hide you with your own money. And I have proof of the other end, Brooke added, holding up a faded fax copy. I found a vaccination record for Skyla Holloway, dated November 1997. You would have been 3. What about it? The clinic wasn't in Lexington, Brooke said. It was in West Virginia. A free clinic in a town called Williamson. Dennis told you they lived in Louisville before Lexington, right? Yeah. Williamson is nowhere near Louisville. And here's the kicker. The doctor's note mentions no prior records available. If you were their kid, why wouldn't they have your records? Why go to a free clinic in another state unless they were hiding you? We were building a picture, pixel by pixel, but we needed more firepower. I called Owen Price. Owen was exactly what I expected a local investigative journalist to be. Overworked, undercaffeinated, and deeply cynical. We met at a library in a suburb halfway between Cincinnati and Lexington. He wore a tweed jacket that had seen better days and carried a satchel that looked like it was held together by duct tape. I laid out the charity angle. I showed him the connection between Rusk, the trust, and the Missing Children's Initiative. Owen listened, taking notes in a small spiral notebook with a fountain pen. When I finished, he whistled low. I tried to nail Rusk on a zoning kickback scheme 5 years ago, Owen said. He slipped out of it because the witnesses suddenly developed amnesia. But this is federal, wire fraud, embezzlement, kidnapping across state lines. Can you prove the money flow? I asked. I can request the charity's tax filings, Owen said. Public record for nonprofits, if their administrative costs are more than 20%. It raises a flag. If they are paying consultants more than they are giving to victims, that is the smoking gun. Get it, I said. And look for payments to a company called Holloway Logistics or anything with my parents' names. You are going to burn your parents, Owen said, looking at me over his glasses. They are not my parents, I said. They are Rusk's employees. That night, Marissa sent a process server to the house in Lexington. We did not give Dennis and Marlene a heads up. We served them with a draft of a lawsuit, a civil RICO complaint naming them as co-conspirators in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. But we included a letter from me. I know about the payments. I know about the credit freeze. I know about West Virginia. Rusk is going to prison. You can go with him, or you can sign the attached affidavit stating exactly when and how he gave me to you. If you sign, I will ask the district attorney for leniency. If you call Rusk, I will destroy you. It was the hardest thing I had ever written. I was threatening the people who had nursed me through the flu. But I had to remember the credit cards. I had to remember the lie that lasted 25 years. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Dennis. Do not speak, I answered. Just tell me, are you signing? He told us it was legal. Dennis was crying, a grown man, sobbing. He told us the money was for your care. He said it was a stipend from a blind trust. Did you sign the confidentiality agreement, Dennis? Yes. Then you knew it was dirty, I said. Sign the affidavit. Send it to Marissa. Tonight. Skyla, please. My name is Violet, I said, and hung up. The affidavits arrived in Marissa's inbox at midnight. They were messy, handwritten on legal paper, scanned with a shaking hand, but they were damning. Dennis admitted Rusk brought the child to them in a motel in West Virginia. He admitted receiving monthly cash envelopes for 5 years, then checks from the Missing Children's Initiative after that. We had him. We had the money trail. We had the witnesses. Now, we had the meeting. Rusk had set the meeting for Friday afternoon at a private club in downtown Cincinnati. Neutral ground, he called it. I walked in with Marissa. I was wearing a blazer I had bought at a thrift store, but I felt like I was wearing armor. Hidden inside my bra was a digital recorder the size of a stick of gum. Rusk was sitting by the fireplace, drinking sparkling water. He stood up when we approached. He looked exactly like his photos. Silver hair, impeccable suit, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Flores, he said smoothly, and Ms. Dane, I did not realize you had retained counsel. I am not here to negotiate, I said, sitting down without shaking his hand. I am here to listen to your fairy tale. Rusk sat back. He looked comfortable, too comfortable. It is no fairy tale, he said. It was a tragedy. Your father, Harrison, was a complicated man. He had enemies. When you were taken, the threats were specific. They said if we went to the police, you would die. So I made a command decision. I found a safe harbor. The Holloways were good people. I placed you there to keep you alive. And the money? Marissa asked. The millions of dollars in fees you have collected while she was safe? Administrative costs. Rusk shrugged. Running a shadow protection program is expensive. Why didn't you bring me back when my father died? I asked. Or when the threat passed? The threat never passed, Rusk said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. There are still people who would want to hurt the Carver heir. Name them, I said. I cannot do that. Because they do not exist, I said. The only person benefiting from my disappearance is you. You and my cousin Caleb. Rusk's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Caleb is a fool. He has nothing to do with this. But you do, I said. We know about the charity, Gideon. We know about the kickbacks. We know about West Virginia. Rusk went very still. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He leaned forward, and the veneer of the polite lawyer vanished. Underneath was a predator. You have a vivid imagination, he said softly, but imagination is not evidence. And if you try to take this to court, I will bury you in paper for the next 10 years. You will be 40 years old and broke before you see a dime. Is that a threat? Marissa asked. It is a reality check, Rusk said. He looked at me. Take the $5 million. Violet, go back to being Skyla. It is a nice life. Why ruin it? Because it is not mine, I said. I stood up. We are done here. Walk away, Rusk said, his voice cold as ice. And you will wish you had stayed missing. We walked out. My legs were shaking, but I held my head high. We had him on tape threatening me. We had his admission that he placed me with the Holloways. It wasn't a confession of fraud, but it was enough to open the door for a subpoena. I got back to my apartment, my old apartment, just to check the mail before going back to Brooks. I felt triumphant. I felt like the hero in the movie who just delivered the killer line. I unlocked my mailbox. Inside was a single, thick manila envelope. No return address. I carried it upstairs. I locked the door. I put it on the kitchen table. I opened it with a knife. A photograph slid out. It was not an old photo. It was a digital print, high resolution. It was a picture of me, but not me as a child. Me yesterday. I was walking into Marissa's office. The photo was taken from a car across the street. I was looking down at my phone, unaware. I turned the photo over. There was a message written in black marker. The handwriting was jagged, aggressive. We know about the nurse. We know about the journalist. We know about the DNA. Stop digging, or the next picture will be of a funeral." My breath caught in my throat. I dropped the photo. I thought I was the hunter. I thought I was the one setting the traps. But as I looked at the grainy image of myself, captured by an unseen lens, I realized I was wrong. I wasn't the hunter. I was just the prey who had wandered into a bigger cage. The photograph of me walking into Marissa's office was still sitting on my kitchen table, curling slightly in the humidity, but I forced myself to look away from it. I could not let fear paralyze me. That was what Gideon Rusk wanted. He wanted me looking over my shoulder so I would stop looking at him. 2 days later, Rusk arrived at Marissa's office. He did not make an appointment. He simply walked in, bypassing the stunned receptionist. Wearing a navy suit that cost more than my entire college education, he carried a leather briefcase and an air of suffocating politeness, as if he were visiting a sick relative rather than the woman attempting to dismantle his empire. Marissa stood up from her desk, her spine rigid. I remained seated, my hands gripping the armrests of the cheap office chair until my knuckles turned white. "Mr. Rusk?" Marissa said, her voice like broken glass. "To what do we owe the displeasure? We were just drafting a subpoena for your bank records." Rusk ignored the threat. He smiled, a soft, pitying expression that made my skin crawl. He pulled a chair up, uninvited, and sat facing me. He did not look at Marissa. He looked only at me. "Skyla," he said gently, "you look tired. My dear, the stress of all this, it takes a toll on a young woman, doesn't it?" "My name is Violet," I said, though my voice lacked the fire I wanted it to have. "Of course," he nodded, as if indulging a toddler. "But you have been Skyla for 25 years. It is who you are. It is who your friends know. It is the name on your degree. Why throw away a quarter of a century of identity for a ghost story?" He placed his briefcase on his lap and clicked it open. He pulled out a single, crisp document bound in blue paper. "I am here to offer a solution," he said. "A quiet one, a clean one." "We are listening," Marissa said, moving to stand between him and me, a physical barrier. "We call it a transitional support package," Rusk said, his eyes still fixed on me. $5 million was my opening offer. I am prepared to increase that to $7 million, plus a complete identity sanitization. We fix the credit issues your adoptive father caused. We set up a trust, a new one, that guarantees you a monthly income of $20,000 for the rest of your life. You can write your books. You can travel. You can be free. "And in exchange?" I asked. "You sign this." He tapped the blue document. "It is a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. You retract your claims. You acknowledge that the DNA test was inconclusive, and you agree that Gideon Rusk acted in your best interest to protect you from historical threats." "You want me to lie," I said. "I want you to be practical," Rusk corrected. "Think about it, little girl. You are up against a machine. Do you really want to spend the next 10 years in depositions? Do you want your medical history read into the public record? Do you want the world to know about the time you were hospitalized for anxiety in college? Or about the abortion you had when you were 22? The air left the room. I stopped breathing. I had never told anyone about the abortion. Not Dennis, not Marlene, only the clinic, and Brooke. "How do you know that?" I whispered. Rusk spread his hands, a gesture of mock innocence. "I told you. Skyla, I have been protecting you. That means watching you, making sure you were safe. I know about your anxiety. I know about your struggles with insomnia. I know that you are currently late on a manuscript for a client named Gary who writes terrible detective fiction." He knew about Gary. He knew about the medical records. He knew everything. I felt naked. I felt like the walls of the room were made of glass, and he had been standing on the other side watching me sleep, eat, and breathe for my entire life. "Get out," Marissa said. Her voice was low and dangerous. "Why are you so afraid of the truth coming out? Mr. Rusk?" I asked, finding a shred of courage amidst the violation. "If you protected me, why hide? Rusk stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked down at me, his eyes devoid of warmth. Because the truth is a commodity, Skyla, and right now, your version of it is worthless. The truth is not always in your favor. Sometimes, the truth is just a story the winner tells. He placed a business card on the desk. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer is rescinded, and I take the gloves off. He walked out. The silence he left behind was heavy, filled with the unspoken realization that he had not just been managing my money, he had been curating my existence. He breached medical privacy, Marissa said, grabbing her phone. That is illegal. We can add that to the pile. He doesn't care about legal, I said, staring at the empty chair. He is playing with my head, but Rusk was not just playing with my head, he was playing with the world. An hour later, I was back at Brooke's apartment when my phone rang. It was Owen Price, the journalist. Do not look at the internet, was the first thing he said. What? Do not look at Twitter. Do not look at Facebook. Skyla. Seriously. I immediately opened my laptop. It was everywhere. A local Cincinnati blog had picked up a tip. The headline screamed, "Local editor claims to be missing heiress in multi-million-dollar extortion scheme." I clicked the link. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely navigate the trackpad. The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. It painted me as a struggling freelancer with a history of financial instability, thanks to Dennis's credit cards, who had concocted a gone girl fantasy to scam a grieving family. It mentioned my history of mental instability. It quoted an anonymous family source who said I had been stalking the Carvers for months. They are calling me a grifter, I said, my voice breaking. It is a smear campaign, Owen said. Rusk owns shares in the media conglomerate that owns that blog. I checked the filings. He is planting this. People are commenting, I said, reading the bottom of the page. Lock her up. Sicko. Imagine doing this to a poor old lady. Skyla, listen to me, Owen said urgently. This is the playbook. Discredit the witness. If he destroys your reputation now, no jury will believe you later. We need to counter this. I need to publish my story. Now. Not yet, I said. We need the smoking gun. If we publish now, it is just, he said, she said. I need to prove he stole the money. I hung up. I felt sick. I felt dirty. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. Then Hannah called. They are at my house, Hannah sobbed. Caleb and his lawyers. They are screaming at me. Skyla. They are showing me the article. They said you are trying to destroy the family name. Caleb said if I talk to you again, he will petition to have me declared incompetent and take the house. Hannah. It is a lie, I said. Rusk is doing this. I do not know what to believe anymore, she cried. You show up, and suddenly my life is on fire. Maybe you should just take the deal. Just stop it, please. I cannot take this. She hung up. I sat on Brooke's couch, the silence pressing in on me. This was the trap. If I stayed silent, Rusk won. If I fought back, I destroyed the only sister I had left. I was toxic. Everything I touched turned to ash. Hey, Brooke said, walking in from the bedroom. She was holding a stack of papers. Stop pitting yourself. I found something. She threw a spreadsheet onto the coffee table. I went back through the debt, she said. The credit cards Dennis opened in your name. I traced the collections agency that bought the debt when it went into default in 2010. And it wasn't a normal agency. It was a company called Apex Asset Management, registered in Delaware. So, Brooke pointed to a highlighted row. Apex is a shell. I looked up their corporate registration. Their registered agent is the same paralegal from Rusk's firm, Silas Vane. And guess what else Apex owns? I looked at the paper. Apex Asset Management, subsidiaries, Knox County Missing Children's Initiative. My jaw dropped. The debt wasn't just debt, Brooke said, her eyes wide. Rusk bought your debt. He owns your financial failure. He used a shell company to buy the bad loans Dennis took out, probably for pennies on the dollar, and then he kept them on your record to tank your credit score. He wanted you financially paralyzed. He wanted you desperate. He wanted you stuck in freelance gigs so you would never have the resources to hire a lawyer. He engineered my poverty, I whispered. He did not just steal my fortune. He made sure I stayed poor. It was a level of cruelty that was almost impressive. It was total control. My laptop pinged. A new email. I glanced at it, expecting hate mail. It was from an address I recognized. Admin Rusk Partners, com. But the subject line was odd. Meeting minutes. Q3. Trust review. I opened it. It looked like a mistake. A calendar invite, or a summary sent to the wrong distribution list. Maybe someone typed S for Silas, and it auto-filled Skyla, because they had been researching me. I scanned the document. It was a dry summary of assets, real estate holdings, stock performance, and then, at the very bottom, under a section labeled Pending Litigation Risks, there was a single line, Status of Violet, Maintain delay, File motion to dismiss based on mental competency, Liquidation of assets to offshore holdings scheduled for February 1st. February 1st. That was next week. Brooke, I said, grabbing her arm. Look, she read it. He is cashing out. He is going to drain the trust and move it offshore before the court can freeze it. He sent this by accident, I said, or some overworked secretary did. We have to move, Brooke said. We cannot wait for Owen's article. I called Marissa. I put her on speaker. We have a date, I told her. February 1st. He is liquidating. That changes the strategy, Marissa said instantly. Her voice was sharp, professional. We stop playing defense. We stop trying to sue for damages. We go for the jugular. How? We file an emergency ex parte motion, Marissa said. We go to the probate judge tomorrow morning. We do not sue Rusk. We sue the trust. We argue that the trustee has breached his fiduciary duty and is acting against the interests of the beneficiary, you. But he will deny I am the beneficiary. It does not matter, Marissa said. We present the DNA. We present the debt trail Brooke found. We present the accidental email. We ask the judge to remove Rusk immediately and appoint a temporary independent guardian for the money. If we get him removed, he loses access to the accounts. He cannot liquidate. Can we do that? It is a long shot, Marissa admitted, but it is the only shot. If he moves that money offshore, you will never see it again. We have to ambush him in open court. Do it, I said. I need you there, Marissa said. In the courtroom, you have to stand up in front of him. You have to look the judge in the eye and say, I am Violet Carver. I will be there, I said. I hung up. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was done being scared. Rusk had overplayed his hand. He thought I was a scared little girl who would take $7 million and run. He did not realize that by taking everything from me, he had left me with nothing to lose. I walked to the window. The rain had started again, blurring the streetlights into streaks of gold and red. My phone buzzed again. A text message. It was from Rusk, not the office number. His personal cell. I opened it. I have kept this secret longer than you have been alive. Are you sure you want to open it? The box does not just contain money. Skyla. It contains monsters. I stared at the screen. Monsters. He was talking about himself. I typed a reply. My fingers were steady. I am not afraid of monsters. I was raised by them. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. Brooke, I said, do you have a suit I can borrow? I have a court date. The filing of the emergency motion was not a dramatic courtroom showdown like on television. It was a stack of paper, 3 inches thick, slid across a clerk's desk in the Hamilton County Probate Court at 8:30 in the morning. Marissa Dane did not look like a warrior. She looked like an exhausted accountant. Her eyes red-rimmed behind her glasses. It is done, Marissa said, walking back to where I sat on the wooden bench in the hallway. We filed for an immediate freeze of the Carver Trust assets and an emergency removal of Gideon Rusk as trustee due to gross fiduciary misconduct and conflict of interest. "How long do we have?" I asked. My leg was bouncing nervously, a piston of anxiety. "The judge reviews it in chambers," Marissa said. "But because we attached the affidavit from Dennis and the email about liquidation, he has to act. Rusk is trying to move money offshore. Judges hate that. It makes them look impotent." 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was not a text. It was a notification from the court docket system Marissa had set up for me. Motion granted. Temporary restraining order issued. Assets frozen. Hearing set for Friday. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs since 1999. We had stopped the bleeding. Rusk could not move the money, but stopping him was not the same as beating him. We retreated to Marissa's office. The mood was focused, intense. Owen Price was there, typing furiously on a laptop that looked like it had survived a war zone. "I have the money trail," Owen said without looking up. "I followed the consulting fees from the Missing Children's Initiative. Rusk was sloppy. He got arrogant." "Show me," I said. Owen turned the screen. It was a spiderweb of transactions. "The charity takes in donations," Owen explained, tracing a line with his finger. "Tax deductible. Of course. Then, they pay out 60% of their revenue to a company called Blue Ridge Strategy Group for donor outreach and consulting. Blue Ridge is registered to a P.O. box in Nashville." "Let me guess," I said. "Rusk owns Blue Ridge." "Better," Owen grinned, a shark-like expression. "Blue Ridge lists its primary place of business as a residential address in Nashville. I pulled the property deed. It is a 4-bedroom house owned by a holding company, but look at the utility bills." He clicked a file. "The electricity and water are paid for by Rusk and partners, but nobody lives there. It is an empty house used to launder the charity money. And here's the kicker. Blue Ridge Strategy Group is the entity that pays the mortgage on a certain house in Lexington, Kentucky." I stared at the screen. The circle was complete. The money people donated to find lost children was being used to pay the people hiding one. "Publish it," I said. "Not yet," Marissa interrupted. "We need this for court. If Owen publishes now, Rusk will claim trial by media and move for a dismissal or a change of venue. We drop this bomb in front of the judge." My phone rang. It was Hannah. I hesitated, after the pressure Caleb put on her. I was terrified Rusk had gotten to her too. "Hannah?" I answered, putting it on speaker. "He lied to me." Hannah's voice was shaking, but it was not with fear this time. It was with rage. "Skyla, he lied to me for 20 years. What happened?" "I found the papers," she said. "After you left, I went through Dad's old study. I tore it apart. I found a file Rusk made me sign when I was 18. He told me it was just formality, to keep the search active. He said I was signing as the family representative to authorize investigators. And it was a power of attorney," Hannah cried. "I signed over my voting rights in the trust to him. I gave him total control. I didn't read it. I was just a kid, and I missed my sister. And he was the nice man in the suit who promised to bring you home. I gave him the keys to the kingdom. Skyla, I let him do this to you." "You did not know," I said firmly. "You were a victim too. He groomed you to be compliant, just like he groomed Dennis and Marlene to be quiet." "I am coming to Cincinnati," Hannah said, "and I am bringing Grandma." "Is she okay to travel?" "She says she has to see you," Hannah said. "She says she has the last piece. She says Violet had a box." I felt a prickle of recognition. A box. "Be careful," I said. "Do not drive your own car. Rent one. He is watching." While we waited for Hannah, the next domino fell. Marissa's receptionist buzzed. "Ms. Dane? There are 2 people here to see you. A Mr. and Mrs. Holloway. They say they have an appointment with the devil." I stood up. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dennis and Marlene walked in. They looked 10 years older than they had last week. Dennis was unshaven. Marlene's eyes were swollen. They looked small. They looked like what they were. Ordinary people who had made a deal with a predator and were now being digested. They stopped when they saw me. Marlene made a move to step forward, then stopped, remembering my threat. "We brought it," Dennis said. He placed a thick, leather-bound notebook on Marissa's desk. "Marlene, she writes everything down. She always has." Marissa put on latex gloves and opened the book. It was a diary of sorts, mixed with a ledger. November 14th, 2001. Meeting with Mr. Rusk at the diner, Office 75. Cash payment received. $2,000. He asked about the girl's nightmares. Told him she sleeps fine. July 4th, 2003. Mr. Rusk called. Angry about the school records. Said we have to change the doctor. Sent an extra $500 for the trouble. I read the entries over Marissa's shoulder. It was the banality of evil recorded in neat, cursive handwriting. They had sold my childhood in monthly installments. "Why?" I asked, looking at Marlene. "Why did you keep this? If you knew it was illegal?" "Insurance," Dennis said, his voice hollow. "Rusk always made us feel like we were disposable. He made us sign those papers. I thought, if he ever tries to turn on us, if he ever tries to say we kidnapped you on our own, we would have proof he was the architect. And now he is turning on you," I said. "He is going to tell the court that you stole me, and he only found out later and tried to help." "We know," Marlene whispered. "That is why we are here. We will testify. We will go to jail if we have to. Just, please, Skyla, do not let him win." "My name is Violet," I said again, but this time I did not say it with anger. I said it with a kind of sad finality. The people who raised me were gone. These were just witnesses. Hannah and Evelyn arrived late that afternoon. We met in a secure conference room at the courthouse, arranged by Marissa to ensure safety. Evelyn Carver was in a wheelchair now, pushed by Hannah. She looked frail, her skin almost translucent, but her grip on her purse was iron. "Violet," she said when she saw me. She did not ask. She stated. I knelt beside her chair. "I am here, Grandma." "He thought I was senile," Evelyn said, her voice raspy but clear. "Gideon, he thought I was just a useless old woman. He did not know about the bank." "What bank?" "First National in Knoxville," Evelyn said. "When you were born, your father opened a safety deposit box, not for money, for keepsakes. He gave me a key. He gave your mother a key. Gideon never knew about it because it wasn't part of the estate. It was personal." She reached into her dress specifically, fumbling with a safety pin attached to her bra strap. She pulled out a small, flat silver key. "We went there this morning before we drove up," Hannah said, handing me a metal box. "We cleared it out." I took the box. It was cold. Heavy. "Open it," Evelyn commanded. I lifted the lid. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and dust. There were photos. Originals. Not copies. My father holding a baby. My mother laughing. And on top, a plastic hospital bracelet. Tiny, pink, Violet Carver. D. O.B. The 4th of December, 1994. Father, Harrison Carver, but underneath the bracelet was a piece of construction paper, folded into a square. I unfolded it. It was a drawing, a crude, crayon drawing of a house with a swing set, and next to the swing set, a stick figure of a girl holding hands with a stick figure of a woman. The woman had gray hair, and written at the bottom, in the jagged block letters of a 6-year-old learning to write, "For Grandma, so you don't forget me." I stared at the drawing, and then it hit me. Not a visual memory, but a sound. I heard the scratch of the crayon on the paper. I heard Evelyn's voice saying, "Draw me a picture, Vi. Draw me something to keep in my special box." I remembered the smell of her perfume, lilac. "I drew this," I whispered. "I drew this in your kitchen. You were baking cookies. Oatmeal raisin. I hated raisins." Evelyn let out a sob and pulled my head down to her shoulder. "You picked them out," she cried. You always picked the raisins out and lined them up on the napkin. I looked at Marissa. She was smiling, a genuine, fierce smile. That is it, Marissa said. The DNA is science, the bracelet is fact, but the memory? The drawing in a box Rusk did not know existed? That is the nail in the coffin. He cannot claim you are an imposter when you know things only Violet could know. But Gideon Rusk was not a man who went down without burning the world around him. The next morning, 2 days before the hearing, the process server arrived at Marissa's office again. But this time, he wasn't serving Dennis. He was serving me. Marissa took the papers. She read the cover sheet, and her face went pale. "What is it?" I asked. "He filed a cross-complaint," Marissa said. "He is suing you for fraud, extortion, and—" She paused, looking up at me with disbelief. "He is accusing you of conspiring with Hannah to murder the real Violet Carver." "What?" I screamed. "That is insane!" "Read it." Marissa shoved the paper at me. Plaintiff alleges that the defendant, Skyla Flores, is a career con artist who targeted the grieving Carver family. Plaintiff alleges that Flores has manipulated Hannah Carver, a vulnerable individual, into participating in a scheme to declare Flores the heir. Plaintiff further asserts that he has received anonymous tips suggesting the real Violet Carver met with foul play in 1999, and that Flores is using inside knowledge obtained from dark web forums to impersonate the deceased. "He is trying to turn this into a murder investigation," Owen said, looking over my shoulder. "If there is a murder investigation, the assets stay frozen, but not in a way that helps you. They become evidence. The probate case stops until the criminal case is resolved. That could take years." "He is buying time," I said. "He knows he's going to lose on Friday, so he is flipping the board game over." "It is desperate," Marissa said, "but it is dangerous. He is going to try to get the judge to order a psychological evaluation for you. He wants to paint you as unstable, delusional, a stalker." "Let him try," I said. I picked up the crayon drawing. I picked up the hospital bracelet. "We go to court on Friday," I said. "And we do not just defend, we attack. Owen, is the article ready?" "It is loaded in the CMS," Owen said. "I just need to hit publish." "Hit it," I said. "Skyla," Marissa warned. "The judge might—" "I do not care about the judge's schedule anymore," I said. "Rusk just accused me of murder. I'm going to accuse him of being a thief in front of the entire world." Owen hit enter. 10 minutes later, the story broke. The $2 million lie. How a prominent Nashville lawyer used a missing children's charity to fund a kidnapping. The headline was brutal. The graphics were undeniable. Owen had uploaded the flowcharts, the shell company deeds, the consulting fee invoices. My phone started blowing up. Reporters, Twitter notifications, but I sat still. I watched the view count on the article climb. 1,000, 10,000, 50,000. Rusk wanted a media war? He just got a nuclear strike, but the real battle was waiting in courtroom 4B. That night, I stayed in the safe house Marissa had arranged. I sat on the edge of the bed, unable to sleep. I held the hospital bracelet in my hand. It was so small. My wrist was so tiny then. I thought about the girl who wore it, the girl who loved pink cake and hated raisins, the girl who trusted the world. Rusk had killed that girl. He hadn't murdered her body, but he had murdered her innocence. He had murdered her trust. He had paused her life for 25 years to make a profit. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think a news article can stop me? I own the judges. I own the police. Tomorrow. You walk out of that courtroom in handcuffs." I did not reply. I walked to the mirror. I looked at the scar on my eyebrow. "You missed one thing. Gideon," I whispered to the reflection. I picked up the black dress I had bought for court. It was simple, severe. "You forgot that little girls grow up." I turned off the light. Tomorrow, I would not be Skyla Flores, the freelance editor. Tomorrow, I would not even be Violet Carver. The victim, tomorrow. I was the reckoning. Courtroom 4B smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was a windowless box of mahogany and fluorescent light, designed to reduce human tragedy to paperwork. Gideon Rusk sat at the defense table. He did not look like a man facing the dismantling of his empire. He looked like he was waiting for a valet to bring his car. He adjusted his silk tie, whispered something to his lead counsel, a man with a jawline like a shovel, and offered a small, pitying smile to the gallery. I sat on the plaintiff's side. To my left was Marissa, who was arranging her files with the terrifying precision of a surgeon laying out scalpels. To my right was Owen, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was clearly bought yesterday, tapping his foot against the leg of the table. Behind me, the benches were full. Hannah sat with Evelyn's wheelchair. Reporters lined the back wall, hungry for the ending of the story Owen had started. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. Judge Harrison entered. He was a man with a face carved from granite and a reputation for hating time-wasters. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked over the rim at Rusk. "We are here on an emergency motion to remove the trustee of the Carver estate," Judge Harrison said. "Let us not waste time, Mr. Rusk. Your response?" Rusk stood up. He did not let his lawyer speak. He buttoned his jacket and walked to the podium. "Your Honor," Rusk began, his voice smooth, resonant, the voice of a man who had charmed juries for 40 years. "This entire proceeding is a farce. The plaintiff, Ms. Flores, is a tragic figure, a woman with a history of financial instability, credit defaults, and mental health episodes. She's been manipulated by conspiracy theories and her own desperation into believing she is a lost heiress." He turned to look at me. "We have protected the Carver assets for 25 years. Rusk continued. "We have kept the trust alive on the faint hope that Violet Carver might return. But this woman? She is an opportunist. She has no memory of the family. She presents a DNA test from an at-home kit that can be easily contaminated or forged. She is not a victim. Your Honor, she is a predator." The gallery murmured. Rusk was good. He made me sound like a villain. Marissa stood up. She did not walk to the podium. She stayed at the table. "Your Honor," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur. "Mr. Rusk speaks eloquently about protection, but we are not here to debate rhetoric. We are here to do math." She signaled to the clerk. "Exhibit A, bank records for the Knox County Missing Children's Initiative, a charity run by Mr. Rusk's firm." The screens on the wall flickered to life. The spiderweb Owen had discovered appeared in high definition. These records show that over the last 20 years, $3 million of charitable donations were funneled into a consulting firm called Blue Ridge Strategy. Marissa said, "Exhibit B, the property deed for Blue Ridge Strategy. It is a vacant house. The utility bills are paid by Rusk and Partners." Rusk stiffened. "And finally," Marissa said, "Exhibit C, the disbursement records from Blue Ridge Strategy, monthly payments of $1,500, commencing in August of 2001, sent to a post office box in Lexington, Kentucky. The owner of that box? Dennis Holloway." The room went silent. "Objection," Rusk's lawyer shouted. "This is circumstantial." "It is a paper trail," Judge Harrison said dryly. "Overruled. Continue. Ms. Dane." Marissa looked at me. It was my turn. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my hands were steady. I walked to the witness stand. I swore to tell the truth. "Ms. Flores," Marissa asked, "who is Dennis Holloway?" "He is the man who raised me," I said. "He is the man Gideon Rusk paid to keep me hidden. Do you have proof of this arrangement?" "I do." I pulled the email printout from my folder. The accidental email regarding the meeting minutes. "This was sent from Mr. Rusk's office 3 days ago," I said, holding it up. "It details the agenda for the Carver Trust. Item number 4. Status of Violet. Maintain delay. File motion to dismiss based on mental competency. Liquidation of assets to offshore holdings scheduled for February 1st. I looked directly at Rusk. He is not protecting the assets, Your Honor. He is looting them. Rusk's face flushed a deep, angry red. He leaned over to his lawyer, whispering furiously. Mr. Price, Marissa called next. Owen took the stand. He looked nervous until he started talking about the documents. Then, he was in his element. I analyzed the consulting contracts between the charity and Rusk's shell companies, Owen said. They are not just similar, they are digitally identical. The metadata shows they were all created on the same computer by a user named G_Rusk_admin. The signatures are copy-pasted images. Same pixel artifacts in every single one. So, Marissa clarified, the contracts justifying the fees were forged? They were ghost-written, Owen corrected, by the same ghost who wrote the invoices. Then came the moment Rusk feared most. We called Dennis and Marlene Holloway. The bailiff opened the doors. Dennis and Marlene walked in. They looked small. They looked terrified. They walked past Rusk, who fixed them with a stare that promised retribution. But they did not look at him. They looked at me. Dennis took the stand. Mr. Holloway, Marissa asked softly, did you kidnap the plaintiff? No, Dennis whispered. Then he cleared his throat. No, we were given her. By whom? Dennis pointed a shaking finger at the defense table. By him, Mr. Rusk. Did he tell you why? He told us she was in danger, Dennis said, tears welling in his eyes. He said her father had enemies. He said if we didn't take her, she would be killed. He told us to change her name. He told us to move states. He told us he would handle the paperwork to make it legal. And the money? Marissa asked. He said it was a stipend for her care, Dennis admitted. But later I realized it was hush money. When I asked questions, he threatened to stop the payments. He threatened to call the police and say we took her. He turned you into jailers, Marissa said. He turned us into accomplices. Dennis wept. Rusk stood up, slamming his hand on the table. This is preposterous. These people are confessing to a crime and trying to pin it on me to get a plea deal. Sit down. Mr. Rusk, Judge Harrison barked. The gavel banged, a sharp crack like a gunshot. I have one last piece of evidence. Your Honor, I said from the plaintiff's table. If I may? The judge nodded. I picked up the metal box Evelyn had given me. I walked to the bench. I placed it on the ledge. Mr. Rusk claims I am an imposter with no memory, I said. He claims the DNA is fake, but he cannot explain this. I opened the box. I took out the plastic hospital bracelet. I held it up. Violet Carver, I read. Dated April 12th, 1994. Then I took out the drawing. The crude crayon house, the gray-haired woman, the jagged, childish writing. Mr. Rusk claims to know everything about the Carver family, I said, turning to face him. But he did not know about the safety deposit box my grandmother kept. He did not know about the drawing I made for her the week before I was taken. You cannot Photoshop a 30-year-old crayon drawing. Gideon, you cannot fake the smell of the paper. I looked at the judge. This is not just evidence of identity, I said. It is evidence of love. Something Mr. Rusk knows nothing about. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Rusk stood up slowly. He looked at the drawing. For the first time, the arrogance cracked. He looked at the exit sign. He looked trapped. It was a different time, Rusk said, his voice raspy. The father, Harrison, he was reckless. I had to stabilize the estate. I had to make hard choices. You made profitable choices, Judge Harrison corrected. The judge shuffled his papers. He did not look at Rusk. He looked at the clerk. The court finds that the plaintiff has established a preponderance of evidence regarding her identity as Violet Carver. The court further finds that there is significant evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty by the trustee. Judge Harrison looked up, his eyes hard. Gideon Rusk is hereby removed as trustee, effective immediately. All assets of the Carver Trust and all personal assets of Mr. Rusk are frozen pending a federal audit. I am referring this transcript to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into kidnapping, wire fraud, and identity theft. You cannot do that, Rusk shouted, his composure shattering completely. I built that fund. I saved this family. Bailiff, Judge Harrison said, escort Mr. Rusk out and ensure he does not leave the building until the police arrive. Two officers moved toward the defense table. Rusk looked at them, then at me. His eyes were wide, white-rimmed with shock. He wasn't the monster anymore. He was just an old man who had lost his checkbook. As they led him away, he didn't scream. He just slumped. The air in the room felt lighter, cleaner, as if a window had been opened. Marissa squeezed my shoulder. We got him. I looked back at the gallery. Hannah was crying, holding Evelyn's hand. Owen was typing on his phone, already breaking the news. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Dennis and Marlene. They were sitting on the bench, holding hands, looking at the floor. They looked like they were waiting for the executioner. I walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was chaotic with reporters. But I pushed through them. I waited by the elevators. A few minutes later, Dennis and Marlene emerged. They stopped when they saw me. Skyla, Marlene whispered. We are sorry, Dennis said. We know that is not enough, but we are sorry. I looked at them. I thought about the hate I had felt last week. I thought about the credit cards, but then I thought about the grilled cheese sandwiches. I thought about the nights Dennis drove me to band practice. I thought about the fact that when Rusk threatened them, they finally, terrifically, chose to tell the truth. You are going to be sued, I said. The trust is going to sue you for the money you took. You will lose the house. You will lose your pension. You will likely face probation for the fraud. We know, Dennis said. It is fair. I am not going to stop the lawsuit, I said. You have to pay for what you did. You have to own it. They nodded. But, I said, and my voice softened, just a fraction. I am not going to testify against you in criminal court. I will tell the DA that you cooperated. I will tell them you were pawns. Marlene let out a sob. Why? Because you were my parents, I said. You were bad parents. You were lying parents. But you were the only ones I had for 25 years, and I am tired of losing families. I reached into my bag and pulled out a card. This is the number for a credit repair specialist, I said. Fix the identity theft, Dennis, every cent. If you do that, maybe, one day, we can get coffee. I did not hug them. I did not say I loved them. That was earned, and they had to earn it back. I turned and walked away. I met Hannah and Evelyn at the front steps of the courthouse. The sun had broken through the clouds, washing the gray city in blinding winter light. It is over, Hannah said, hugging me. He is gone. He is just beginning, I said. Prison is going to be a very new experience for Gideon Rusk. What do we do now? Hannah asked. The money. It is going to be a mess to untangle. I do not care about the money, I said. Let the lawyers handle it. I have something else to do. I walked over to the clerk's office on the first floor. I pulled a form from the rack. Petition for change of name. I took a pen. I looked at the blank line. I was not Skyla Flores. The victim. I was not just Violet Carver. The ghost. I was someone new. Someone who had survived the fire and the lie. I wrote, Violet Skyla Carver. I kept the name Skyla. It was the name that survived. It was the name that fought back. But I put it where it belonged, in the middle, protected by the name I was born with. I signed the paper. I walked out into the sunlight. A reporter shoved a microphone in my face. Ms. Flores, Ms. Flores, how does it feel to win the lottery? I stopped. I looked right into the camera lens. I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, the smile reached my eyes. It was the smile from the missing poster. Grown up and dangerous. My name, I said, is Violet, and I didn't win the lottery. I just took back the ticket. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on Gideon's downfall. Don't forget to subscribe to the Monica Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people.